Alright, so that live button. Okay, it says that we are live, so I'm going to assume that that is actually the case and that we are live. Welcome everyone, this is Andres Restart. I am joined by my friend and co-host Brandon, and tonight we're going to be talking about Nintendo as we do every Monday night at now 8 p.m. Eastern time. That is the time, that's when we're doing it. So, yeah. Now, as the title may suggest, we're going to be talking about Nintendo Switch 2 news. So when I say Nintendo Switch 2 news, just to clarify so we understand what's going on, this isn't reported by Nintendo. These are simply sites that are considered to be reputable by the masses that have been reporting about things behind the scenes. Nikkei, Bloomberg, their reports. We're going to be going into this. We're also going to be talking about Nintendo's plan around Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Mario, maybe the sequel to Mario Odyssey, Metroid Prime HD, and whatever comes in between, and also Prime 4, and Donkey Kong as well. I figured I'd throw that in there. And then we'll also be going into a little bit about my thoughts on Fire Emblem Engage. I've been playing it throughout this weekend. Brandon hasn't gotten a chance to do it yet. It's my job to sell him on the game, apparently. So, we're gonna talk about all of that tonight. But please, guys in the chat, let me know how everything is looking and sounding. If it's, for whatever reason, looking off or sounding weird, let me know. That would be super, super useful. I am currently enjoying a migraine.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's a good time. But despite this migraine, we're going to have a good time. So, no worries. But, Brandon, how are you? Well, what is new with you, bud?
I'm doing good. I ordered Kirby online from Walmart's website.
That me.
Yes, because last week I went to go pick up Kirby. I think I said on the podcast that I was going to do this as well last week, that I was just waiting to go to the store to pick it up physically. But I finally went to the store, and I waited in line, because, you know, Walmart always has games like 50... They get like 10% off, or $10 off, I mean. So you get like $50 games usually, unless they're like brand new. Sometimes they're still 60. But I wanted to go get it for 50, but they have them all locked up. And I waited in line for 10 minutes. And by line, I mean literally one other person, because there was almost nobody working there. And I went up to the cashier and had them go look and see if the game was there, and no. They had Kirby Star Allies, but they did not have Kirby's Forgotten Land.
No, that's
bootleg. I was very upset.
That's bootleg Kirby.
Yeah, I know. It's like they bargain bin Kirby.
Star Allies is not a bad game, just for the record.
It's just a very mediocre game. It's not a game that I want to play, personally.
Yeah, me neither. I would want Forgotten Land.
Yeah.
Forgotten Land is the bee's knees, but it's on its way, and you will get it.
Yeah, it just shipped today. Yes, it says arriving by the end of the month, by the 31st, but it just shipped today, so it should be here sooner. I'm not sure where it shipped from, though. I'll have to see if I can find a better form of tracking than just the little graph telling me if it shipped or not.
Likely the North Pole.
Yes, for sure. Santa himself, crafted that, set it down.
Yes, I think it probably came from the North Pole. So, as for me, I have been playing Fire Emblem this weekend when I've had the chance. I've only gotten 5 chapters in, which I wouldn't say is nothing, but...
How many chapters do you think are in the game?
I don't know.
Well, just guessing on how long you think the games typically are and how far you are in.
I mean, the thing is, earlier chapters are shorter, right? So that can be a little misleading. I could just Google it, but then I'll know.
Yeah. Do you want to know? Does it matter?
Know? Alright, I'm not going to tell you how many chapters there are, purely because I don't want to look it up and know. But I'll say this. I've seen, like, I didn't watch them. Well, I've seen pieces, but, like, I watched some parts of, like, the English dub of Male Lear for my video, because I'm playing the game in the Japanese version, female Lear, so I just wanted to kind of see, like, the cutscenes and the dialogue from the different, like, ways you could play the game. So that's why I was looking at some of, like, those, like, extended, like, like like those YouTube videos that compile every major cutscene in the game into one movie.
Yeah.
So where I was at was around the 26-ish minute mark, and it's like an hour and a half-ish plus.
So maybe 12 to 15 chapters.
Yeah, maybe something like that. I'm assuming that the other chapters will be longer. I get the sense that I'm like maybe a quarter into the game. About a quarter to a third, around there. So, yeah. But yeah, I've been playing the game, and it's great. I love it. I'm having a great time with Fire Emblem. It's really good. I don't think I care that the story isn't as good as Three Houses, as some people have been saying, and the verdict isn't entirely there yet because I'm still relatively early into the game. But I'm enjoying everything else about the game. Like the music is it slaps. Like the exploring the world is fun. Like there's a little bit more exploration this time. Like
yeah, that's exciting.
Exploring the Somniel, while it's technically not as big as the monastery, it's not as annoying either. So the thing about the monastery was kind of big in comparison to the Somniel, but everything was just kind of spread out. Like all the same things are still in the same place, and like the different mini games, from what I've seen and heard and what I've played so far, are more fun than what we had in Three Houses, to kind of give you more things to do in that little hub area. And also visually, it's a lot more pleasing to the eye. There's a lot less noticeable like aliasing issues and weird pixels and blurry textures, and just like it just runs a lot smoother. You don't see like characters in the background that are running at low frame rates. Like it just looks and runs a lot better. Now, in part, that's by design, right? It's not just they're putting better power up this time around. Then I'm sure they are using some techniques to take better advantage of the system, but it's just, well, one, it's a smaller environment, and it's using a art style that I think
simple,
a little bit more simple, and it's not, it's more dense, and I think that helps it a lot. And I'll say, from a visual perspective, the game looks sharp. Like, it looks really sharp. Like, when you go from Three Houses to Engage, you're like, oh, that looks really sharp and colorful and vibrant. Like, the game stands out. And I think it's great. Like, visually, I think the game looks really good.
I believe the resolution is higher. They're also using anti-aliasing this time. So it should look a lot cleaner. But I don't remember exactly the method. Like, I don't remember the resolution targets or exactly what kind of anti-aliasing they're using. But more than I remember, it was like just over 720p with no anti-aliasing for Three Houses. So anything's a big jump from that, especially with the very thin black outlines in the game. Those always caused a lot of aliasing in Three Houses.
Yeah, what is it with those? Why do we see the black outlines on characters all the time? They're doing it in Kirby's
Just stylistic choice, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because like, Engage is going for the more. Well, I wonder if they did it because they still use like cel-shaded anime like looking characters in Three Houses, but the environments are more on the realistic side.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they did it to kind of help them stand out a little bit more, and so it kind of was easier to see them and portray them in a more realistic world. I wonder if that's what it had to do with, because you don't see that in Engage, but the entire world is more of that anime look. Like, the characters match the world they're in. It's not like two different art styles in one.
A lot less of a clash.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks great. But we'll come back to a little bit more on Fire Emblem. I'm sure you may have some questions, and we'll get to that. But I want to get through the chat, say hello to people in the chat, see what people are doing, answer some questions, or get to some ideas, and then we'll move forward. All right. So I see a comment here. Mac user, first it'll be the Mario movie this year. Donkey Kong movie might be 2025. Zelda movie would be 2027. If it goes every 2 years for Nintendo movies, Sega does the same with Sonic. Makes sense. I think that's optimistic. I hope that you're right.
I mean, it took us a long time
Yeah.
to get the Mario movie.
Yeah, now the thing is, unless they started production on another movie before, like if they're already in production with the next movie, then maybe. Like, or if they're like deep into that planning process, then maybe. Like the Sonic movie, they already have the cast, they already have the art design, they already have a lot of the assets. It's just kind of like reshooting. So it's, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not trying to like undercut the amount of work that goes into each movie after the original, but it is greatly reduced. And it's probably been a fairly ongoing process. I haven't read any interviews or listened to anything on the Sonic movie. I'm just making these assumptions based off how typically movies go. So,
right.
It's a different beast. Like making a Mario movie and then jumping to make a Donkey Kong movie are two different things. So there's that. Not also the Sonic movie's live action.
Some stuff.
It's live action with some CGI.
Right. They have some stuff because they have all the renders for like Donkey Kong from the Mario movie.
Sure.
And all like the different Donkey Kong world and things. But yeah, they need still be a lot of work. Yeah. It also depends, like, is the reason it took so long to get the Mario movie just because they were working on the Mario movie, or is it because they were like planning multiple movies at the same time? I don't know. Like, have they already been working on and planning these other movies? Then it makes sense. But if they are just like looking to see how the Mario movie does, then definitely not.
Yeah, but we don't know that, right?
Yeah, we have no idea.
We don't know that. We don't have any hard information suggesting that they have been sort of planning a series of movies all in quick succession. Like we can surmise that they definitely want to do more than just this Mario movie. We know that because they've talked about movies as a part of their big plan, so it's definitely on their mind. And we see that they created that Nintendo Film Studio or something, Nintendo Pictures.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure if that's entirely just for movies or but other things, but the point is, like, we see the signs that they definitely want to do more than just the Mario movie, but that doesn't mean that they're deep into the process for the next things. So I'm not ready to fully believe that we'll see a Donkey Kong movie 2 years from now. Now, I think that would be great, though. I think a movie every 2 years would be wonderful. And I mean, truth be told, I think it'd be even more amazing if they can get to a point where it's maybe a movie or two per year. Like you look at how many sequels. I'm not saying immediately.
It's too many.
I'm not saying.
Let's not get. Marvel's a bad comparison because they put out entirely too much things and way too many movies.
But Disney puts out a lot of movies too. Like, I'm not saying that there needs to be a lot, and this is just me like thinking way ahead. If they can get to that point where it's like maybe
10 years from now, maybe.
Yeah, maybe we do see like an annual Nintendo movie, right? Not always like a Mario movie every year, but maybe you got Mario, you got Zelda, you got Pokemon. I mean, Pokemon Company they might handle it.
Yeah, they have a lot of franchises to pull from. Yeah, Pokemon would definitely do their own thing still.
But if it becomes a thing where it's almost like this, okay, so you see a lot of like Disney movies, right? And it may be an entirely new set of characters, cast and all, but it can still attract a lot of attention. It's like a new IP, right? I mean, it is. So,
do you think Nintendo would ever do that?
No, hold on. Let me finish my point. I'm not saying that Nintendo would start creating movies based off entirely new characters without there being a game. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, though, that Disney has such a level of recognition when it comes to movies that when they do announce a movie, even if it's not based off an established universe or character, it still has a great chance to succeed. So, if Nintendo can get to a point where movie watchers and moviegoers now recognize Nintendo as a brand that outputs quality movies, they can get to a point where maybe, okay, we got a Mario movie, we got a Pokemon movie, we got a Zelda movie. Those are really popular characters that can sell well, like on their name alone. But what if we get to a point where it's like I don't know, like maybe Metroid, for example.
Yeah, Metroid.
Like
A
Metroid
Pikmin movie.
Yeah,
Somehow.
like those, like exactly a Pikmin movie. Like those movies,
Kid Icarus anime.
they'd be amazing. But like those things don't have a strong likelihood of being incredibly successful because they're not as
Right.
popular brands. They just aren't. But if it gets to a point where people come to expect like a Nintendo movie every year, and you're at the theater and you see a new trailer, right? I'm just talking about like a mainstream, like a casual movie watcher or watcher, not like an avid Nintendo fan that's on Twitter every day and YouTube every day
Right.
that will know the moment Nintendo announces a movie, right? But like, let's say a few weeks after a movie is announced officially, most people won't know about it, but like the mainstream people will go into the theater and they'll see a trailer, and then they'll see Nintendo, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. Like they don't even know what it is, but they see Nintendo, they know they're gonna watch it. Why? Because they saw the Mario movie and loved it. They saw the Donkey Kong movie and loved it. They saw the Pokemon and Zelda movies and loved it in the last like 5 years. So now they recognize Nintendo as a brand. So when they have that Metroid movie, they're like, oh, whoa, I didn't expect them to go in this direction, but it's Nintendo, so I know it's good, so I'm gonna watch it. And then maybe look into the games at the same time, you know? Like, I think they could get to that point where people recognize Nintendo as making quality movies, but that's like, you know,
brand recognition.
It's all about brand recognition, exactly. And I'm thinking years ahead, right? I'm not thinking like tomorrow.
Long time.
I'm not saying we're gonna get a Metroid movie, you know, even in the next 5 years. Like, I think that's wishful thinking. But who's to say we can't get there eventually? Like, Nintendo's plan is to grow, right? So
yeah, and it doesn't have to be movies. It could be animation or just any kind of like TV series.
Maybe a circus.
A circus.
That's gonna be their next branch off. They're gonna have a traveling circus.
Nice.
Yeah.
They just make a documentary about it, Netflix style.
It would be funny.
Just put it on Netflix.
I feel now I'm like thinking
Nintendo's not gonna work with Netflix. I'll tell you that. That's for sure. Whatever you see from Nintendo from shows,
you don't think
almost can guarantee you. Well, Netflix burned them last time. They almost did a whole Zelda show before.
Yeah, but so you're saying there's no going back? Bridges
There's
burned
no
entirely?
way. I doubt that they would do that. There's so many other people. Plus, Netflix doesn't seem very highly anymore, anyways, because they keep jacking up the prices and taking all the good stuff off. So and plus their stock is like plummeting.
I get what you're saying, but like I think if Nintendo wanted to do something that wasn't in the theater, and they wanted to partner with a streaming
HBO
platform,
Max.
Well, let me ask. Like, my thing is, okay, they could go on HBO Max, but like, I mean, I have HBO Max. I know a decent amount of people have HBO Max, but
I have HBO Max.
But I'm just thinking, like, they want to go mainstream.
Last of Us is on HBO Max.
It is.
HBO Max is arguably just as popular as Netflix now.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean like Hulu and stuff as well. All those kind of stuff. Netflix is not as big as it used to be. It's not like this
most
giant thing that can never be beaten anymore.
Streaming.
It's like
platforms.
One bad move from death. Nah, we're not that close. It's like the GameStop of streaming services almost. It's in the shitter.
Well, apparently, just a quick Google search still suggested Netflix is at the top, but
I'm sure
these
they
are.
are.
These
it's
are
not like
opinions. I'm just seeing different articles, but like this article, U.S. News is ranking Netflix 1, then Fubo TV, then Disney Plus, then Amazon Prime, then Crunchyroll, then Hulu, then YouTube TV, and Peacock, and
they didn't even include HBO.
I was hoping to see. Well, HBO was there.
Wait,
oh
no,
no, it wasn't.
That.
I saw H for Hulu, and I assumed that was HBO. Yeah,
Hulu is like not even that good. But you have to pay extra just for no ads, which you'd have to do on Netflix now too.
I don't.
Such crap.
I don't watch Hulu really. Although I do want to watch.
Imagine paying
Bleach,
for a service
so
and then getting ads.
I want to watch the Bleach series, and I don't want to.
Yes.
That's the only reason I would get Hulu. So maybe I'll get it for a month and just.
Hulu, I think, has like Bob's Burgers and different shows like that.
Okay. Well, let's come back to the chat here because that was just one comment. DW for Smash, thanks you for stopping by. Natsu, something about Donkey Kong's eyes aren't sitting right with me. What did I do? What's wrong with the eyes? Do you know those are my eyes? I'm just kidding. I photoshopped them in. That's a joke. I didn't actually do that. Or did I?
Are you talking about the, like, in the Mario render? Like the new Mario movie
in the thumbnail,
renders?
in the thumbnail I put Donkey Kong. In there, one of the one where there was like two different shots of Donkey
yes, I
Kong
see.
on front of the blue screen when Miyamoto was talking about his new character design. Those eyes.
Gotcha.
Lethal John, I am live. Am I alive though? That's the bigger, better question.
The eyes really do resemble like the old artwork for Donkey Kong though, so it's
Maybe that's where some people feel a little uncomfortable about it. Nazi, you know what a Nintendo is? I thought this is a PC Master Race channel. Haha. Our true identities have been revealed. Nah, Brandon tries to get me to play more PC games, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm like, whenever Brandon's like, hey,
he's not exactly the greatest PC
like,
on the planet.
first I'll ask him, hey, is it for Switch? No.
Switch? Okay. If I'm being completely honest, if it's a third-party game, Switch is the last platform I'm thinking about playing it on. Literally the last platform. But it has so many good exclusive games that it doesn't even need third-party for me. I just love it anyways.
Yeah, I remember. I honestly, like, it's kind of funny that I think about this.
I would like it if the Switch was powerful enough for me to actually consider playing third-party games, though.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for Switch too.
We will get to that. Notice the title. Yeah, but Brandon, a thought that just came to mind I want to kind of talk about briefly. I remember growing up and looking at the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube and the DS and the Wii, then the 3DS and the Wii U. I even thought about it a lot. In fact, I might have thought about it more. I was like, man, there are so many good games on 3DS, but I don't feel like playing games on my 3DS. I'd rather play them on my Wii U, but there's like no games on my Wii U. And there's this, and then I remember thinking, like, there's always these not just conversations, but like there were conversations about what's happening. What was happening is there were consistent droughts. Like, we wouldn't get that many big Nintendo games per year, assuming you were relying on one system. But if you had both Nintendo systems, you played the Nintendo games that came on both, their frequency of release was actually fairly consistent.
It was good, yeah.
So I always kind of like wonder, like, what if it was just for one system?
The Wii U on its back.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, yeah, that's true. It's a good point. Like, the 3DS definitely kind of helped Nintendo during those dark ages. But, like, you think about it, or I thought about it then, Microsoft had just one platform. Sony had just one platform. They succeeded with the PSP for a generation and the Vita flop, so they moved away from that. But, for the most part, Nintendo was the only company dividing their software across two different platforms. Which, in hindsight, is kind of nuts. Because think about this for a moment, Brandon. Microsoft and Sony were much bigger multimedia companies. Nintendo was a dedicated game company. So, and Nintendo has grown. I'm not sure which one's bigger, Nintendo or Sony. Sony may still be bigger. I'm not entirely sure. But, like, Nintendo's always kind of, like, had this disadvantage. And then they spread themselves thinner across two different platforms, and they're trying to create content for two different platforms, while Sony and Microsoft, they'll buy studios to work on their dedicated platforms, right, and get the third-party support. Right. It was never a recipe for success. Like, they were limiting themselves in so many ways.
I mean, it wasn't as bad, at least, because when you had to make a game for like the portable console, it was a lot easier to make than a home console game. But still, like, it's still splitting up your development effort a lot, and having all of your developers working on one platform where you have one target hardware is a lot easier.
Yeah, that is true. All right, so let's I'm gonna kind of go a little bit quicker down some of these things in the chat. Guys, if you could like the stream, it will help out a lot. We're currently around 70 people watching, which is amazing. Let's get to 100 plus. Let's get to 100 plus.
Let's go.
Like the video,
share
share it to somebody. Yeah, exactly. Share the stream. Let's get there. What's a good poll question to put in, Brandon? What should we ask everyone? What's a good you know what? Okay, here we go. Here's a poll. It's relevant to the title.
Okay.
Do you believe
in magic?
The Switch 2 reports for mid 2024?
Ooh.
All right, let me know what you guys think. I'm putting that in that chat. We are getting to that poll to that topic shortly. But let me kind of just go quickly through the chat. A little bit of a speed round here, and we'll go from there. Let's see. Okay, I'm glad you guys are all letting me know everything looks and sounds great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm addressing it now, but I do keep my eye on the chat while I'm talking. So I see you guys saying it, even though I haven't gone around to like acknowledging that you guys clarified that for me. But thank you.
Right. We're always watching.
AB James. OJ from Player Wrestling seems to believe Odyssey 2 is not happening this year, but a new 2D Mario game with a new art style is still rumored. Well, if Switch 2 is not coming out until 2024, I would agree. And if you go back to my predictions video, I was split, right? I've always talked about, hey, if Switch 2 is coming out this year, we get a 3D Mario. If it's not, we get a 2D Mario, and then 3D Mario next year. That's been my stance the entire time. Now, I've been hoping and leaning more towards 2023 because I feel like Nintendo should do it, but with these reports, now I'm leaning the other way. But we don't know.
Leaning like a boat.
Yeah,
it all depends on the info.
Depends on the info. Depends on the wind. Exactly. But the foundation of that boat is the same. It's the same boat, just different wind.
Right.
Paco Salvador, did you see that they're doing a Fire Emblem Engage manga? This could open the door to more Nintendo IPs to be adapted to manga anime.
Like an official one?
I did not hear that. Like, yeah, is it an official one? Yeah, I think that's important to know. Because there is, like, a Twilight Princess manga. There's a Metroid manga. There are mangas for Nintendo franchises. But I'm not sure on how official they are. I have to double check that. Like, are they canon? Like, you know, like, does it tell you about the actual story? Like, and is that, like, considered to be a part of the legit timeline? Those are different things. Like, I'm pretty sure the Twilight Princess manga is not at all official or canon.
I don't think so.
No. Andrew Lambton, do you think we'll wait to release the new Donkey Kong game till the rumored Donkey Kong movie comes out?
Possibly. I mean, it depends on the timeline.
Right.
I mean, we don't really know the timeline for either of those things, really. Because, like, when we heard about Donkey Kong, that was, what, 2021? 2020?
Yeah, so
a while back.
I'll say this. Brandon and I, in our conversations, have always been assuming that the Donkey Kong game comes before the movie. And at least my reasoning has been, how can you have a video game movie without there being a game? Like, that to people can be like, oh yeah, that. But, I mean, Donkey Kong has such a history, and with Donkey Kong being in the movie, like, could I see them coming out with a movie before the game? Potentially. Especially if they think that movie is going to be so successful that it'll boost the sales of the game. I can see that. But I think that Donkey Kong simply being in the Mario movie sets up a little bit more notoriety or popularity for the Donkey Kong character.
We'll already have the park coming out to, like...
It's already been announced.
Further.
Yeah,
the park, but it would be coming out, like, in a year or two. So, if they get a game out within then, about that time, you'll also have the park there to kind of help. I don't know if you need a movie on top of that right away.
Yeah. And the other thing is we don't even know if the movie is real. Like, it's a rumor.
Yeah, we have no idea.
Yeah.
I would, like, the thing is about the game, though, we also don't know much about that. We, like, know barely anything about it.
Yeah.
there's like speculation or like what people think it's probably 2D, but some people think it might be 3D, but nobody really knows for sure. We definitely haven't seen anything on it, like gameplay or with the design of anything. So we don't really know what's going on.
And
we just know that a Donkey Kong game is in the works, probably.
Pretty much. I do want to dive a little bit deeper into this because our next topic is literally a combination of Zelda, Mario, Metroid, and Donkey Kong, so I do want to get into that. But
nice segue then.
I don't want to segue yet because I want to get through the chat real quick. Yeah, and we still haven't talked about Switch 2 at all, and I feel like it's more important to talk about that first because that sets up our discussions about the other IP because it's all about my perspective is I believe Nintendo's planning something for Zelda, Mario, Metroid, and Donkey Kong, and depending on what they're doing with their next system, it affects those plans. So we're gonna get to the Switch 2 news first, but let me just kind of get through this chat here. I'm trying to do it quick, but we always tangent. Charles
Good
Trudeau
questions.
added me. You are right that Nintendo's planning ahead on this. They always have to be. Dajo, Kirby and F-Zero had an anime too. I remember there being a Kirby show, and I remember that one. And I have seen scenes from the F-Zero anime. I've seen one of the most epic Falcon punches ever. Super Chris, hello, thank you for modding. Let's see here. I'm gonna focus on ads for now, just so I can get into the topics. All right. Devin Lyons, if the Zelda movie happens, do you think Nintendo would make the story canon or separate from the games? Damn, that's tough.
Probably separate. I don't think the Mario movie is going to be canon at all.
I think it'll be its own canon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a really good question. I don't expect anything in the movies to change anything in the games, if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah.
I think any sort of character that they introduce is going to be inspired from a Zelda character. Any sort of everything that they would build into a Zelda movie will be based off a concept and idea from a previous Zelda game. So, yeah. It's tough for me to say if they'll have it fit into the timeline. I'm just gonna stick to what I said initially. It's gonna be its own canon. It's not like it's not gonna be not canon, but it's gonna be like its own canon, which
like a movie canon,
a movie canon, and which maybe there'll be a Nintendo Cinematic Universe. Maybe that will extend to Smash Brothers someday. Doubt it, but you never know.
Maybe. Be epic.
Yes, it would be. Melfi Sky, would you rather have a Zelda movie or a Zelda TV series get made?
Series. I think Zelda works better as a series than a movie.
Well, the thing is, I'm thinking about there was a Zelda TV series once, and the Excuse Me Princess.
Well, that was horrible. Yes.
Yeah.
But there was also a Mario movie once. So
by TV, if you like something episodic, like like an HBO Max or a Netflix, like 8-episode season that's like an hour long.
Yeah,
each.
I mean
something
TV
like Game of Thrones.
Is not really the right word, I guess, because TV doesn't really even hardly exist anymore.
I don't think 20-minute episodes going on forever is a good idea. But if it's
maybe if it was like an anime or something, it might work.
Yeah, maybe.
I could see I don't know.
I'm
trying to think. Maybe you remember Goblin Slayer?
I do.
You remember how they had dungeons in that? Yeah. I wonder if they could do dungeons similar to how they did in Goblin Slayer, but with puzzles as well.
Because there are a few animes like Goblin Slayer that kind of show that you can the whole concept of a dungeon, and with a lot of video game tropes, but it's a show. And it's a compelling story.
Is he a silent protagonist, or does he just not reveal his?
I haven't
not take off his helmet?
It in a long time. I don't remember either.
There was something about him, he didn't show his face, or he didn't.
He would never take off his helmet.
Something like that. He's like Mandalorian, I guess.
He doesn't talk. I don't remember.
I don't
Probably
remember.
talk.
I'd have to go back.
I have
and
to go
watch
back
it.
and watch it. I actually never saw the finale, so I gotta go back. Yeah.
I've only seen. It's only just one season, right?
To my
You never got
knowledge.
any more.
Unless they added a season 2. Not sure. You know what's gotten a few seasons?
A lot of things.
The one about meeting a girl in a dungeon.
Oh, is it bad to pick up girls in a dungeon or
Something
something?
like that. There's like 4 seasons. And
I've
it has,
never seen that show
Well,
because
it-
the name's so fucking weird.
Yeah, well, there's also the one of like how to, if you're a slime and you live in another universe or something. There was one about a slime.
Yeah, I think those are made by the same people because they have the same kind of trope.
They're actually pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they are. You should watch them. I think you'll like them. But they do have a lot of video game references and themes and motifs. And they kind of show how a traditional video game would fit within the context of a show. So they're actually like an anime.
Okay.
Like, so they're actually a great framework to how to handle something similar to a Zelda. I don't know if it would exactly be Zelda, but there's a framework there that I think they could follow that would work. If you're asking me what I would want to see, while I wouldn't be opposed to a Zelda anime that would be like super hype and epic, like I would love that. Like if it's like hyped up like an Attack on Titan anime, without a million final parts, I'd be for that.
Yeah.
But I think more likely a movie would make more sense. Like I think like a Zelda anime, as cool as I would think that would be, and as much sense I think it would make, or even like a Studio Ghibli film style and like anime movie, like that would be amazing. I think that if Nintendo wants to make the big bucks, they're gonna go in a different direction because anime is just not mainstream enough. So,
but imagine where like they do each. It'd be nice. Like each arc is a dungeon, but it's not just the dungeon. It's like the town and area around the dungeon, meeting the characters, exploring, like figuring things about the world, and then tackling the dungeon all in one like arc. And then you have like 6 to 8 arcs, and then you have like the big showdown with the game. Like imagine how cool that would be. Like imagine how much they could build up that world and how cool they could set that up. What?
I do like the idea. I like the idea that like if an arc is one dungeon, like let's say you go to like the forest.
Well,
right?
they wouldn't be like ridiculously long arcs. They'd be maybe like 10 episode arcs total.
Sure, but I like the idea but I feel like the implication is that if you're having a single arc on a particular dungeon, it's not like you're in the dungeon the entire time. There's a story, right? So like you're gonna go to like the Kokiri forest, and you're gonna notice there's gonna be a problem, and you're gonna meet particular characters, and there's gonna be a narrative, and there's gonna be a dynamic between the different characters involved, and there's gonna be a threat, and you guys are going to address it. Like there's gonna be a problem, and maybe there's a back and forth. Maybe you're not just in the dungeon the entire time. Maybe you go in and out depending on circumstances. But it's a story that involves a boss and a dungeon. Like each arc has a like how like in most fighting animes, there's always gonna be at least one major fight per arc, right? Usually several.
Right.
Like there's gonna be the final fight, and that's always gonna be.
You got mini bosses too.
Yeah, exactly.
The ones in between.
So I think they could probably pull something like that off, and that'd be pretty cool.
And then you got like one episode in between each arc that's like them like getting to the next place, but it goes like deeper into the characters. Like I guess whoever is your main party, right? Like Link and Navi or whoever, Zelda, whoever is with you at the time. Like they can have a dedicated episode in between where they're just like going over their personalities. They move to the next place.
Yeah,
I think that would work really well.
There could be some in between stuff. Yeah. Devin Line, Zelda is love. That you are correct.
Zelda's love, Zelda's life.
Yes.
Give me more Zelda now.
Devin Lyons, like make Twilight Princess 2, but just as a movie. Twilight Princess would actually.
Twilight Princess 2. Interesting. I mean, I think I said last week that I wanted them to explore like after Twilight Princess, like if Link could somehow figure a way to get back to the Twilight Realm, that'd be pretty epic.
Yeah, I'd love to actually be able to explore that. Who knows? Maybe in Tears of the Kingdom. Probably not.
Also, if Tears of the Kingdom is the same Ganon like from Twilight Princess, like it would be interesting if they explored like why they put him under the castle.
Yeah. Recently my thinking's changed a little bit on that. I'm not
Okay.
saying it can't be that Ganondorf, but I don't know. It's been so long to the future. Like, the thing is, like they could just do a basic. Oh yeah, at one point he was reincarnated again, and this is just the Ganondorf, right? Like, it's not necessarily the Twilight Princess Ganondorf. It's just Ganondorf.
What if they went big brain? Because you have your theory. I think you call it the eventuality theory, where just everything in the timeline eventually happens.
Correct.
But there's a lot of people who think that there's a timeline convergence. What if there was a timeline convergence, and then like all of Ganondorf's like memories and everything he's learned from all of the different timeline Ganondorfs, even though they're the same person, like obviously they have very different experiences. Like, what if he just learned all of that? You just like all that knowledge was just like in the one guy. So now he just like knows everything that's happened in all the timelines.
I don't.
And then they play off of that.
I don't think that's necessarily different from my eventuality theory. It's just kind of like one of those things where a lot of things can happen, right? Like, if we already have games where you're jumping from one sort of like pocket of space to another pocket of space, then why can't you go from one timeline to another timeline?
Right.
Like, if you can travel time and you can travel to different spaces, just different realms.
You should be able to travel the multiverse too.
Yeah, I mean, literally, Ocarina of Time, you are jumping between two different timelines. So, there's that. And Majora's Mask, basically, if you could argue that spawns infinite timelines, and then Skyward Sword also has that situation. So, I think your idea that maybe like Ganondorf can get to a point where like his consciousness from different parallel universes kind of like becomes one, to your point, like late down the timeline, like a convergence, eventuality, like they all can be kind of the same but not, and it could even maybe attribute to why he's stronger. Like, maybe he has knowledge, some level of wisdom from each timeline, tells him a little bit more about how to access his power or use it in some way, and
everything he's learned from every defeat in every timeline.
I don't know if they'll address that specifically in the game, but it wouldn't shock me if at one point or another there's like a little tidbit that maybe we could extrapolate to maybe mean that, and it'll be a theory, but it'll be a theory that have maybe a little bit more evidence. Maybe.
Something in the game might hint to that, but I doubt that they'll just straight up say it.
So,
it could just be like things that Ganondorf says or things that he references where you're like, wait, he should know both of those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's the thing, if he references both of those things, then you can argue that to your idea, or just there's maybe, but let's continue on here. A guy you don't know, between The Legend of Zelda and Metroid, which series do you think would translate to a live-action movie the best? I say Metroid. We agree, and it's just
Metroid is one of the only Nintendo properties I think would actually work well in live action.
The thing is, Metroid is literally inspired by a live-action horror movie. It's called Alien.
Yeah.
So you basically just make a Metroid-themed Alien. There you go. The framework's already established. With Zelda, there's a lot more to figure out and piece together. I'm not saying it can't be an amazing movie, but like Metroid more naturally already translates into a movie. Zelda would need to be reworked. Moving on here. Devin Lyons had another question. Do you think Zelda would work in a more modern setting, like with cars and phones, or would it be opposed and keep it fantasy like how it's been?
That would suck, honestly, I think. If it was like modern day, like actually modern day Zelda. Like no, I don't want that.
You look at like Xenoblade, right? Xenoblade's set way into the future, but it still hits that fantasy sci-fi feel.
Yeah.
Like Zelda is mostly fantasy, but it does have sci-fi elements. So I think they could have a Zelda that's set way even further into the future where you see civilization that's maybe comparable to modern day, but aged. Like, already destroyed, and maybe there's, like, a castle. Right. Like, I think they still need to have the fantasy medieval elements, but they could be something that are set after, like,
I don't want a Link to be pulling out a Glock, bro. I need a bow and arrow.
Yeah, guns would be weird. It wouldn't really be Zelda anymore, would it?
No.
Yeah.
Get a new IP if you want to do that.
Yeah. I do remember that fake Ocarina of Time movie trailer for April Fools a few years back, Sweet Life of Dio Brando. That was a good one. Josh Cohen, could you answer some of my AP calculus related questions? No.
No, well, I mean, I could answer calculus them. Before my life.
I could answer them, but I would get them wrong.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Donna Combe, the Master Glock. There you go.
The Master Glock, yes.
Yeah, you gotta find it like in a bank instead of the Temple of Time. It's an old ancient bank with all sorts of gears and locks and lasers and bots just protecting it. Yeah. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now we're gonna jump into our first official topic. We are 47 minutes into the show apparently. And
it's all good.
Sorry, I wanted to write this down, but I don't have a pen, so whatever. All right.
How could you?
47 minutes, remember. Okay. So,
47 minutes.
Checking the poll here. We'll allow this. The poll's been up for 20 minutes. Do you believe the Switch 2 reports for mid-2024? Currently, and this may change, I'm not taking the poll down yet. As we discuss this, maybe your opinions will change. More people will come in. Like the stream. It'll help more people see it, please. But, question is, do you believe the Switch 2 reports for mid-2024? 52% of you said yes. 48% of you said no. We will see if that changes. But it seems fairly divided. So, what are the reports? Maybe some of you are unfamiliar with it. So, two different reports came out that we talked about, I believe, on Friday. It came out earlier in the week. By the time my video came out, it was Friday. But the reports were one from Bloomberg. And the Bloomberg report was basically saying that Nintendo's going to ramp up Nintendo Switch 1 production for this upcoming fiscal year. And it's tied into pushing Tears of the Kingdom. Okay. Getting more Switches out to sell Zelda. Okay. But people took this to mean, okay, if they're going to try and really ramp up hardware production for this upcoming fiscal year, rather than slowing down, that would suggest that they're not coming with a new system this fiscal year. That's what it would suggest, maybe. Like that's how the article is written.
It's an interpretation.
Right. And then there is another report that came out around the same time from Nikkei, entirely different side of the world. It's a Japanese publication, and they said that Nintendo is now in communications with suppliers to prepare manufacturing the successor to their Switch, due to be out for sale mid-2024. So that's the information. So if we believe everything at face value, or like if we believe the common
everything at face value,
yeah, it basically what it's saying is that this next fiscal year, starting April to next March 2024 is where it would end. Nintendo's actually be focusing on ramping up Switch production, some more Switch Lights and Switch OLEDs and maybe base Switches will be sold, and they're going to try and sell as much as they can this next fiscal year. But it will be the last full fiscal year that'll be dedicated to the Switch family. Then mid-summer 2024, so a few months after the fiscal year, maybe May, June, July, August, around that time period, we will see the release for the next Nintendo system, and that will be their true next generation. Will start mid-2024, and that will be the future. That's what we've been waiting for. Now, a few things. And I see this comment come up all the time, and I'm going to say it now. Brandon doesn't believe it. Brandon, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. right? But you don't believe it, and I don't believe it, and I know a lot of people that are on the internet that make videos and discussions just like this also don't believe it. Most people don't believe this who report on this stuff, talk about this stuff, believe that once the next system comes out next year, they will stop making games for Switch, they will stop supporting Switch, they will stop selling Switch.
Yes. No, we do not believe that. Yes.
Yeah, we agree. So do not be worried that, oh man, I just got my Switch, this sucks, it's all over. No. Your Switch is going to be relevant for years to come. But it does mean that Nintendo will start to transition their support over to their next system. If we compare how they handle things with Sony and Microsoft, we may see a lot of cross-generational releases. We'll see.
For sure.
I will say that I am thinking that because we may be waiting this long, again, take these reports with a grain of salt. It could still happen sooner. It could even happen later. So we don't know for a fact yet, but this seems to give us a timeline, right? We don't know for sure.
We're not sure.
Yeah, we don't know. Now, where was I? Well, actually, let me ask you this, Brandon, before I continue on just ranting. Do you think this report is legitimate? Do you think this is the right timeline for Switch 2?
I think it's a possibility. You know, I was never 100% on this year. I was kind of more 50-50 for holiday this year and holiday next year. But at the same time, if mid-year counts, you know, like August or September, I could see that. Because I don't think it's going to be like May, June, or July. I mean, it could be. That's just not what I'm feeling. I feel like maybe September, like August or September, if it's gonna fit within that mid range. Because like obviously, without this rumor, I was thinking like October or November this year, or October or November next year. But you know, I was always 50-50 on that, so I'm kind of still 50-50, but I'm more like, you know, 50% that it's gonna come out this year, and then like 25% chance that it could come out like next year in the middle, and then another 25% that it could come out next holiday. Well, so okay. I don't know. This doesn't really impact. I just kind of like slot this in to the likelihood of things I already thought.
Let me ask you a question though. Are you 100% no longer thinking then that 2023 is at all an option?
No, I said 50%. Okay. Let me clarify, because I
misheard you. I might have misheard you.
All right, so 50% of my confidence is that it's going to come out this year.
Oh, still.
The other 50%
even with these reports
is split. Yes.
Okay.
The other 50% is split between this report being true and it coming out holiday 2024. So 25% on this report being true and it comes out mid 2024, 25% on holiday 2024.
Okay.
And then 50% on it coming out this year. So it's still 50-50 for the year, but, you know, it's kind of split on when in the year for next year.
All right, cool. I see that we currently have a little bit over 100 people watching. That is awesome. Thank you guys for coming by. Please leave a like. It helps the stream. That way even more people can get into the stream. Let's get to an even higher number. Let's go for it. But, okay, Brandon. What makes you still believe that there's a 50% chance that something could happen this year? What is it about the circumstances that lead you to believe that there's still a shot for next year? For this year. For this year. Yeah, I'm lost.
You know, as terms of definitive proof, I guess there really isn't a ton. I would say it just feels like it's time. Like, it feels like a good year. But it's always felt weird for it to come out this year anyways. I feel like whenever it comes out, it's going to be weird, right? Because if it comes out this holiday, then it's weird that it's not launching with Zelda. If it comes out like middle of next year, it's weird that it's coming out then. I guess the only time that I wouldn't think is odd would be like if it launched holiday 2024 with Mario, because that would actually make some bit of sense. But
yeah,
I think whatever happens, it's not gonna be something with like conventional logic behind it. It's gonna be some Nintendo logic. I mean, there's gonna be logic behind it, but I think it's gonna be something that we don't know. Like, the plan is
It's
gonna be
gonna
something that
be
we're
it's
not
gonna be something
expecting because
stupid.
none of it's making sense at this
It's
point.
gonna be stupid. It's gonna be like, oh man, let's launch it with F-Zero. Like everyone's be like, yeah, F-Zero's dead. No, F-Zero's the next big AAA Nintendo IP. This is it. This is it. But it's gonna be like, it's gonna have no multiplayer, and it's gonna be an entirely single player F-Zero. And Miobil's gonna be like, oh, I've been working on this for 6 years.
It's gonna be the most hardcore F-Zero's ever been.
Yeah, he's gonna be like, hey, remember how I told you Pikmin was done back in 2015? That was a mistake. That was F-Zero. And we've been working on it ever since, and also making Pikmin 4. The Pikmin 4 was actually the multiplayer that was in F-Zero that we decided to make into its own idea, and this is F-Zero. It's a single-player adventure. No, I'm just kidding. All right, this is all a joke. Like, don't take that seriously.
But it is interesting. Like,
go on.
If this report is true, I mean, it's weird because normally I wouldn't think that they would launch a Mario like in the middle of the year, but they're launching Zelda in May, and that makes no sense. So they can launch a game anywhere. Apparently, they don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Like, all logic's been thrown out the window here. So it's hard to even predict timelines. I would never have predicted May for Zelda. It's such a weird month.
Yeah, so right now, I'm personally am leaning towards 2024 more now, as I said earlier.
Okay.
And the reason why, it's purely just because I've always acknowledged 2024 as an option. Even though I personally think 2023 makes more sense. Like, that's what I believe. Like, if I was making the decisions, if I was running Nintendo, I'd be like, give them Switch 2 right now.
Let the people have Switch 2.
Like, if I was making the decisions, that's what I would think. But because I acknowledge 2024 is also a completely legitimate, likely option, and because like every single person who has some level of supposed inside information is suggesting not this year and next year, I kind of have to lean towards 2024 because I have nothing to go by that says for sure it has to happen this year. The only thing I got is, okay, Tears of the Kingdom, Nintendo always pushes Zelda with new hardware, except here we are at the end of January, and unless they announce the Nintendo Switch 2 Tears of the Kingdom Direct tomorrow, it ain't happening this year. Or at least not for by May.
It seems that way.
At least not by May. Like, it just, there's no way, pretty much, I would think, right? Then watch 2 weeks from now, right now, Nintendo does announce both. Like, and then everyone's shocked. Like,
it'll be wild, dude.
You know, like, it'll be one of those things where, like, I would no longer be able to say, hey, my prediction was right, because I already gave up on that prediction and moved on to several other like, you know, it's one of those things like,
we predicted so many things.
Just wrong, so that's just have to take the L.
Even if you predict every option, eventually you're gonna be right.
Right, yeah, but that also, like, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I'm not gonna try and take credit for that, right?
Nah.
So my heart wants the best, coolest, most spectacular thing ever, but you know, I think it's not happening. But I think,
why in the middle of the year though?
Why is Tears of the Kingdom coming out May? Like, okay, well,
yeah,
Brandon, you bring this up, but I know you yourself don't think Tears of the Kingdom is coming out with new hardware. You don't think that.
No,
you don't.
I never really thought that.
Right. There is something, though, that leads me to believe why they chose May.
Okay.
And
do you have an actual reason that makes sense?
Hear me out. Okay? I got something. Maybe you guys will agree with it. Maybe you guys will think I'm just pulling at straws here. Alright? Alright. I talked about this in my video on Friday, but maybe I can go into a little bit more detail. I think maybe Nintendo positioned Tears of the Kingdom in May, in part just because they want to continue like a consistent lineup of things, and also maybe they are planning like in Zelda OLED, and they want to push as much Switches as they can this year. Like that is a plan.
Right.
But I think depending on how things go with supply, we could see a price drop. We haven't gotten a price drop yet. We're gonna hit the 6-year anniversary, which is just absurd. I don't think that's ever happened before. So Nintendo's actually in an incredibly good position, right? Like, yes, we talk about how we are seeing some dips in terms of Switch sales, but Nintendo has attributed that to semiconductor shortages. So now they're gonna put their money where their mouth is, supposedly, and come up with as many Switches as possible. According to Bloomberg, which they have been wrong before, so take it with a grain of salt. All of this take with a grain of salt, right? We don't know. Again, which is why I joke around. Maybe tomorrow Nintendo announces Switch 2 with Tears of the Kingdom. Probably not, but you never know. Anyways, to the point. So maybe that we see a price drop. We see a Zelda OLED. Those things come out this year. They push Tears of the Kingdom. But what I'm getting at here with May, like, yes, part of it's just kind of like marketing and spacing things out and trying to sell as much Switches as they can for this year. But I think also they may want Tears of the Kingdom to come out close enough to when they're going to release their next system. So something that I think is interesting is if you look at every major Zelda release, even if, well, most of them, even if they don't launch with the next system, they are close to the next system. So let's just backtrack, right? Breath of the Wild, it launched with the Switch, but it was also the end of the Wii U, right? Twilight Princess, and it was delayed. Delays likely put it into that window of being a cross thing, and that made the most sense. Same thing applies to Twilight Princess, right? From the actually, that's not me going in the timeline. There's Skyward Sword between those. Skyward Sword,
yeah.
I think the issue with Skyward Sword, just with the way where the timeline was, the Wii died out too quickly, so it came out a year too late and also a year too early.
Really.
Like both, because like I think if the Wii was having more long-lasting sales, they could have maybe pushed things up, created like an HD version, had it launch with the Wii U, or they should have released it a year earlier and not have suffered that. But the point is, Skyward Sword came out, it was the last major game for the Wii. Like that's what it was. And then Twilight Princess was a cross-gen for GameCube and Wii, and it was also delayed. And that's kind of like this history, like the major 3D Zeldas. I could get started on all those smaller Zeldas that have been used to push hardware. But what were you going to say, Brandon?
I was going to say, Skyward Sword had the unfortunate, it launched like right next to Skyrim, which was not good for it.
There was a lot of comparisons there.
If it launched like a year earlier or a year later, it would probably have done much better.
Yeah. It's just it's like really like 2011 was the worst year for it to come out.
Yeah.
But anyways, so the point is that whenever we see like a major Zelda, there's something going on with new hardware. It's really like the Skyward Sword situation is weird because the year that they came out with Skyward Sword, like months beforehand, they announced the Wii U at E3, and they had that Zelda U tech demo. So they put out this like amazing looking tech demo of an HD Zelda, and then 5 months later gave us Skyward Sword in standard definition, 480i to 480p. Like
really?
Yeah, they did that.
I didn't realize that demo came out that early. I thought it came out in 2012.
No. Well,
that's rough.
Let me double check that. Let me fact check. I'm pretty sure Wii U was announced in 2011.
Probably. It came out in 2012. So it probably was announced in 2011.
It was E3 2011, and in the thumbnail they have Zelda U in it. So there you go.
Yep.
Not Zelda U,
That's
but like
funny. I did not know that.
The fake Zelda U. Yeah.
Oh, Skyward Sword, I'm sorry, I love you, but you
Yeah.
You launched at a bad time.
Right. So to get to the point, because I keep beating around the bush, is that Nintendo has had this situation with Zelda where if it's not being used to push new hardware, it's close to it. And I think Skyward Sword's actually this unfortunate circumstance of Skyward Sword shows that they need to do a better job of using Zelda to go into the next hardware, right? So you could argue Tears of the Kingdom is in one of those situations similar to Skyward Sword, where like it's so late to the Switch's life cycle that maybe it's not late enough to come out for the next system, right? So it's one of those things where like maybe it should have come out a year sooner, or it should come out a year later. But the fortunate thing about Tears of the Kingdom in comparison to Skyward Sword is this: it's a different time. It's a time where we see like Game of the Year editions, we see DLC,
Right.
we see patches and upgrades, things of this nature. And
we're not going to worry.
Go on.
It's not going to be like Skyward Sword where we have to worry about it not being on the next system.
Right. And they can create a better version here. And what's interesting is that Tears of the Kingdom is going to have legs. It's going to last for a while. They're going to give us updates. Like
they would announce DLC, but I'm sure they will either right before the game comes out or shortly after.
I'm going to assume E3, just because.
Yeah, I kind of
right
hope
there.
that they don't talk about DLC at all before the game launches and wait till like E3 to announce it.
But I mean that's my big point here is that I think there's this plan with DLC, and because it comes out May, if they have a year to year and a half DLC cycle, the end of that DLC will be, in terms of timing, will position really well around the launch of the next system. And they can release an updated version of Tears of the Kingdom with the full DLC that will have an expansion story. So something I think that should be stressed is that when you take a look at Breath of the Wild's DLC, don't look at that as a framework for how they're going to handle Tears of the Kingdom DLC. Because keep in mind, the beginning of the Switch era was when Nintendo was still sort of figuring out how they would handle DLC. Yes, they had a couple things on Wii U, but the Switch is where DLC started to become commonplace. And actually, most of the Nintendo's bigger games usually have like a major story expansion. Like the DLC story that we got for Breath of the Wild sucks compared to most other Nintendo games expansions. Like some of the better examples are the Octo expansion for Splatoon 2, Torn of the Golden Country. Look at all the Mario Rabbids expansions. Like this is technically from Capcom, but it's on Switch. The Sunrise expansion. I think that's something more akin to what we'll be looking at. Like look at, for example, the expansions they're doing for Horizon, for example. Like that's on a different, that's Sony, but it's like their Zelda comp, right?
Yeah.
And the idea here is that they can give us DLC to, little things to improve Tears of the Kingdom throughout, and then they'll have an update that'll be for the newer system where it'll run better, but they can also push this new adventure that'll be an expansion story that'll have a fairly quick turnaround, and they can use that to push the next hardware. It would actually be incredibly similar to what they've done with what Sony did with Spider-Man, on the PS4.
Yeah, with Miles Morales.
Then they had a better looking, better running version of Spider-Man that had Miles Morales, a whole other story adventure that was almost like its own little game that came out with a PS5. Like they can do that for Tears of the Kingdom, and it falls within this window, right? So it's almost like the launch of Tears of the Kingdom marks the beginning of like this like true legitimate like switch to like speculation / launch window. Like Tears of the Kingdom was like May, like this May is like the earliest possible it would have come out, and it's probably not coming out then, but I would say the latest is like holiday 2024. And I think we're going to see the DLC of Tears of the Kingdom come out through all of this, and once it finishes, I think there'll be a new system to come out with it. Not day one. I think day one they'll use something else, but early launch window it'll be a part of that lineup.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. I think if they're going to launch with Zelda and like try to get something else for Zelda, it would need to be like a complete edition or like with the DLC, but it would have to be like a major DLC component with like more story and things like that. So another little adventure you can go on instead of just a little more to do in the world. Just sell you, because I think they would want its like own box edition as well, for like one that's Switch 2 box, because I think they're gonna have separate boxes for like games. I think they'll still probably use the same cartridges and they'll still work, but like you'll see like Series X and PS5 boxes around. So like they'll have like special versions that are like the next gen version. So I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to get their own box with the DLC. But I don't know if they have to wait all the way to like middle of 2024 for this. It's also kind of like just a weird time again. And it's launching pretty early in the year, so I don't know. And then again, Zelda takes a long time for anything, so if it is like a story DLC, then maybe they wouldn't be able to get that out by like anytime this year.
No, I don't think.
For
I
Switch
don't
2.
think the story DLC will come out in time. Especially if it's like something more of a significant expansion. That's why I was saying a year to a year and a half. Like look at Xenoblade Chronicles 3. The story expansion is not planned until the second half of the year. Like I think their window actually is like by fall 2023. So that's a year and a half window. I'm expecting something similar for Tears of the Kingdom. So, you know, like I think it's something that we won't see come out until more than a year after the release of Tears of the Kingdom. Like it's going to be an actual other adventure. I'm not saying it's gonna be another 100-hour adventure, but it's gonna be like an actual other adventure. Like imagine it's like, hey, there's this other separate land you can explore, and it's like Termina or something, you know, and it's like a little bit of another extra quest. It's cool, and there's things you can bring into the main map that can change some things around, but it's gonna be about that other side area.
Right. To speak more on the rumor itself, I guess, or I guess this aspect of the rumor, do you think it makes sense to launch the system with like Zelda DLC? I think they would need another game, probably.
No. I think so. When I talk about the Zelda DLC stuff, I see it as a launch window.
Okay.
And launch window.
If it's launch window, then I don't even. I think that changes a lot, actually, because if it's launch window, why even? It depends. The only reason then I don't think the launch would have anything to do with Zelda then. The Zelda DLC.
I think it's just it'll fall in that it'll fall in the launch window. I think we're past, assuming they don't have some sort of crazy surprise announcement for this system to come out in 3 months, then we're past this idea that they're gonna use Zelda to push the system immediately at launch.
Yeah,
it will be a
like
part
this
of the
DLC would have been the only way for them to actually use Zelda to push it. But if it's not coming out day and date, then it's like what's
I just
it's not really doing that.
Let me ask you this: like, if with Tears of the Kingdom already out a year, is DLC really the way you want to push the next generation? I think it would be a nice compliment, but I don't think it should be the thing.
Yeah, but my point is, I don't know. It depends. Like, is there gonna be a version of Zelda day one on Switch 2 that takes advantage of the system, or am I gonna have to wait the launch window for DLC?
I see what you're saying.
You know, that makes a big difference. If day one I can get home and experience Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but how it is, you know, full use of the next gen hardware.
Well, I mean,
then that's cool. But if I have to wait, it doesn't really help.
They can already be like advertising maybe the DLC story, but they could release the update for it early on, if not day one. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, do you think then that the reason they would launch it mid next year, because my point is, why? Okay, they're not waiting till mid next year for the DLC, because I do think the DLC would probably take till at least mid next year to be done.
Yeah.
But if you're not launching it alongside the DLC, then you're not waiting for that. So your other launch game, you're assuming, is something that needs to be positioned next year, which is like, I kind of feel like 3D Mario is probably like, it should be done, I would think. You would hope, because how long it's been. But of course, it's just like what their plans are.
So,
but I don't see why they can't. If they're not pushing DLC with this for like a complete version, then if Mario's ready this holiday, they should just launch it then.
I would prefer them to release the system with Mario this holiday. Like, that's what I would prefer. And we'll get to the Mario angle here. But I have a super chat here that's relevant. Thank you very much, Taker, for the super chat. Super appreciated. Taker says, look at what Square did with Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate. They made a PS5 exclusive DLC and an upgrade path. Something like that could work.
I mean, technically, Integrate is even on the Switch. I don't know if it's on the PS4 though.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I didn't realize Integrate was set up like that at all, because it's on the Switch.
I guess what I'm kind of wondering about is how people will feel if they have exclusive DLC for their next generation system when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, no, that wouldn't be good.
I don't know. That's
definitely not. I don't think they can get away with that.
Like,
well, I'm pretty sure all the DLC is still in the Wii U version, right? You can get all the DLC in Breath of the Wild with the Wii U version, right?
Pretty sure, yeah, you can.
Pretty sure.
It was a different time, though.
No, I don't think they'd be able to do that.
No, I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, like, people have been waiting for Tears of the Kingdom for more than half the system's life. So, I don't think it's fair to have exclusive DLC on another system, so you can't get the full experience of Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch. I do think that they should have a visual upgrade, though, and and maybe this other area could be more suited for the next system or something. But I don't know. I just don't think the fan base will be okay with that, and I don't know if Nintendo will want to deal with that vitriol. So I am doubtful. On the flip side, though, I understand the business sense of it, because, well, I mean, if it's an exclusive, it'll get people want to buy the system for it, right? But I think when it comes to, like, Zelda, people just want to play Zelda in the best possible way. So if you have a DLC adventure like that, it will almost be like a second Zelda game that comes out not too long afterwards. And it's like, oh, okay, well, how should I play? I'm going to play the Zelda in the best possible way I can, you know? And by the way, I can enhance my base Tears of the Kingdom by doing it. I think that would be cool. Like, if there's a way to play an enhanced version of Tears of the Kingdom for free on the new system, that might be a good way to kind of get more people to buy it. It's like, okay, I don't have to pay for Tears of the Kingdom again. That might help, you know, like that. I think that it would make a little bit of a difference. But yeah, I think that this whole DLC idea I have, I don't think it's the answer to their launch lineup. I just think it's a piece to the puzzle. I think there's other factors here, like what is the big new game to launch into the system, and I don't think it's Zelda at this point. So if it's not Zelda, what does Nintendo usually use? Mario. So I expect there to be a new Mario. Now you could argue, well, sometimes it hasn't Mario or Zelda. You're right, it's been nothing. And what happens to those systems? They did really badly.
Not good.
Yeah. So I don't expect that. I think the reason why we haven't heard squat from the Mario Odyssey team since 2017 is they're making sure that when that new system drops, they have this Mario ready. So what's interesting is that if the system comes out by mid next year, that's not too far removed from the holiday we were thinking. Like a 6-month difference is really not that much, right? Like we think about like how much longer we've waited for Zelda than we thought we were going to only have to wait 6 more months for what we thought would be what we were getting Mario. You know what I mean? Like it's not that much. And it's also not that far removed from the movie either. Like the movie will still be fresh on the minds of people, especially, you know, with Blu-ray releases and digital releases coming out afterwards, keeping it even more relevant. Heck, maybe they could even announce like a sequel to the movie around shortly before the next Mario game comes out, and that could kind of keep that conversation going. I mean, I think at this point, like if let's say hypothetically the system does come out summer 2024 with the new Mario game, I do not think they will announce the system or the game until next year. They won't. They will not do it. No, like I don't see how you do that, because if you want to sell systems, you just don't do that. Um, but I think that this game will. I mean, there's a Mario game ready. Like there's maybe it's not ready. I shouldn't say that. They're getting a Mario game ready, is what I mean to say, and that's got to be out with the system's launch. Like I do see a scenario, Brandon, where they do a launch without Mario or Zelda. Like, do you even think that's like
blow
reasonable?
my mind? Because where is Mario? Where has Mario been? By this time, we usually would have gotten another Mario game. It's been so long.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, we're talking if it comes out mid 2024 with the Switch, that's a longer gap between Mario Odyssey and the new Mario game than Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which is absolutely bonkers. Like, that's crazy. It's ridiculous. So at this point, it's already insane how long it's taking. So to ask me if I think it's crazy if it would take longer, yeah, probably. Probably crazy. But, is it possible? I guess. It's just like, where is Mario been? They're not just going to not release into the Mario, especially with how popular and how successful Odyssey was. It's like, why not follow up on that? Why have they not done that? And I think the only reason why is because they're going to do it on the next gen system. It's like,
yeah.
Otherwise, why haven't they already done it?
They're definitely holding. Yeah, I think they're definitely holding back for that next generation system. We're on the same page. But let me throw an idea at you that I don't necessarily believe, but it's something that's been discussed. With us having to wait a little bit longer for this next system and Mario, potentially, assuming the reports are true, it means we have to wait longer. It means there's not a brand new 3D Mario for this year to take advantage of the very recent hype of the movie. Like, if it comes out next year, it won't be that much worse, but, they lose something from that, right? Do you think...
The internet moves on very quickly, to be fair.
Yeah, but do you think that maybe they still have something else Mario this year?
I mean, we haven't seen 2D Mario in a long time. It's been so long. I don't know, because I feel like they are waiting to do 2D Zelda when they have like a big new idea. Like, the next time we see 2D Zelda, it's gonna look nothing like the last time. It's not gonna look anything like the new games. It's not gonna look anything like the older games. I doubt it's gonna be. Well, yeah. I mean, that'll be a smaller project. I mean, like the next new 2D Zelda. Like, it's gonna be something completely unique, and because I feel like people are already tired of the new style, and Nintendo kind of realizes they don't have anything more they can do with that. Like, it's dead, it's done. They've milked that for all it's worth. So I think they would definitely wait until they have something new. Whether or not it's ready by now is like so hard to say, because it's been how long has it been? Almost 10 years since the last 2D Mario game, something like that?
Yeah, New Super Mario Bros. U came out as a launch title for the Wii U
in 2012. So we are 11 years.
We're
almost 11 years.
Yeah,
over 10 years since the last 2D Mario game, and that was a really, really like generic, by the numbers sequel to the Wii game. So it's really hard to say. My confidence is not super high just because it's been so long, but at the same time, you do think that they would go back to it because, well, I mean, we saw the success of the Wii U port. Even though I just said it was like a by the numbers sequel that wasn't that good, it sold over 10 million copies or something ridiculous. So
this is what I think, because I do believe they need to do something, or they should. I believe they should, and I believe they will announce something new Mario platforming related by this summer.
I would hope.
That's what I think.
Maybe at E3, I think could be.
That's basically I'm hedging my bets on E3. But what?
I mean, they have to have some kind of big announcement after Tears of the Kingdom to keep E3 like going.
Yeah, totally. I think that's probably multiple things, but I think that this Mario game, I'm not sure what it is. I 100% believe that they have a 3D Mario that if there's anything that I believe, there's for sure 3D Mario happening with a new system. Like, of all the predictions I'll make, that one I feel the most confident in. But when do they show that off? When does that come out? Like, that depends when the system comes out. Like, there's that. But I have a hard time believing that Nintendo will go the whole year without having something Mario to kind of whet our appetite. So there's a few different considerations. The first most obvious is, okay, well, why not a 2D Mario? And I think it could be a 2D Mario. If a 2D Mario comes out in the second half this year, like not maybe, you know, like August, September, like not too late into the year, but, you know, like around 3/4, you know, a little bit past summer, right? Or late summer. Like, I think that would be great. And especially if the next Mario's coming out like maybe mid to the fall, like, you know, also summer to fall next year.
But a year later after that.
A year later, or if it's a little bit less, like 9-10 months, that's okay. But just like, but it's still like a healthy gap. Like, I think that's conceivable. But also, because we're talking about there being a 3D Mario, I can see a scenario where maybe they don't have a 2D Mario ready, and they're gonna space that out to come out a few years, even more like down the road. And if that happens, then we don't have a Mario this year, unless, you know, the reports are wrong and Switch is coming out this year. But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that's not happening. What do they do?
You know, finish what you're saying, and I'll go on when I say.
So, you know, assuming that there's no system coming out this year, and Mario's being saved for next year with a new system, and they're not doing 2D Mario this year, and they're going to wait a few years down the road once the hype for the 3D Mario dies down. What do? Do they just go the whole year without a new Mario anything announcement? There's a couple other ideas I have. And when I introduced this concept for you, I was going to bring this up, but we just kind of, you know, continually tangented it and just never brought it up.
Right.
But
as we do.
Yeah, as we do. But there is an idea going around that I don't believe, but it's interesting. And the idea is DLC for Super Mario Odyssey.
Ooh.
Right. That ooh is like, yeah, that's bullshit.
Interesting.
But let's just kind of entertain the idea, okay?
I mean, we have Mario Kart 8 DLC now.
Right. So if they have Mario Kart 8 DLC, like, who's to say they can't add DLC for another old 2017 game? Like, they could. It's conceivable. Never mind that there were strong rumors of there was going to be DLC for Odyssey.
Isle Delfino. There's even a Delfino like in the map for Mario Odyssey, which you could just take as a reference, but I think they took it out of some promotional art. Like, yeah, I think they removed it.
And the implication of that is that maybe they were going to do something and the idea was pulled or canned for whatever reason. And it makes you wonder, like, what happened there? I doubt in 2017 they're like, oh, let's save this DLC for 2023. That way we can hold off Mario fans, you know, until next year. Like, that just seems like such a stretch, right? But maybe they had some idea and they scrapped it, and maybe they revisited it because of circumstances. Like, that's conceivable to me.
Maybe I just don't think so. It's like. The reason we're getting Mario Kart 8 DLC is because I don't think we're getting Mario Kart 9 for a while. Like, I think we'll probably get like a Mario Kart 8 definitive final release on this, like the Switch 2, or like a complete edition with all of the DLC, and then like 4K update. And maybe that'll be like the last time they re-release that game.
I could see a 4K update.
And then we'll get.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could see a complete edition just because like everything with all the DLC, but. Either way, even if they don't do that, maybe they don't want to because the online or something. Either way, I'd see them just updating that game for 4K and then not having Mario Kart 9 for a while. Whereas I do think the next 3D Mario is pretty soon. So I don't think they're just going to have like Odyssey DLC right now, because then I don't think the next 3D Mario is for like another 2 or 3 years.
So, something else that is interesting, just kind of thinking about it, when we talk about Mario Kart, you would think Nintendo would want to have a new Mario Kart ready. And I think a lot of people speculate that they're going to release a new Mario Kart next year. And I'm with you, Brandon. I don't think they would give us... I don't think they would double the amount of tracks in the game and then literally the next year turn around and give us a brand new Mario Kart.
With literally like none of the content they just worked on.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? They're like, we know you've only had time to play these tracks like a couple times, but forget those. Here's a whole new game.
Yeah, I just don't see that. I can see them maybe 2025. I can see that, but I don't see like it happening next year. I don't. It's a strange situation. It's a very strange situation. But my thinking applies to Mario Odyssey as well. Like, I would have loved a Mario Odyssey a DLC, but that didn't happen. Actually, you know what? Here's a thought. What if the idea for the Odyssey DLC was scrapped, but it was actually repurposed for Bowser's Fury? I mean, it may seem like a little bit of a stretch, but if they were
got islands,
it's got islands. It's water based, you know, and maybe they fleshed up the idea even more so.
You got Bowser Jr.'s there for some reason.
Bowser Jr.'s
with
there.
a paintbrush.
Yeah. It's about cleaning up all the ink.
Yeah. I'm seeing the similarities here. I'm seeing them.
I think this is what happened.
It's not entirely impossible.
Oh, well, okay. Well, let's. All right. Well, what's more likely? That we're gonna get brand new Mario Odyssey DLC in 2023, only to get a new Mario game in 2024, or that the scrapped Isle Delfino idea that would be paying homage and referencing a Mario game that had Bowser Jr. with the brush thing, that where he ran around and there was ink to clean off, and there was the M's, and there was goop everywhere, and there was water everywhere and islands, and then it turns out a few years later that the DLC didn't come out, but they have Bowser's Fury where there's goop everywhere, there's the brush, there's Bowser's Jr., it's cleaning up, it's about water and islands, like, and that actually they just basically took those ideas and made it into its own like separate mini game or side game in 3D World. Like, what's more likely?
Definitely the second option. Although they could have just scrapped the idea and not given it to anything, or they could be saving it for the next game. But I do think at least there's definitely like Sunshine inspiration in that DLC, so it's not out of the realm possibility that scrapped Isle Delfino DLC, if it was even real, got turned into that.
I honestly, like, I'm almost like totally convinced this is gonna be a video. Like,
it's not a bad idea. It's definitely plausible. It's just not 100% like definitely.
We'll never know
what happened
unless they say, hey, yeah, we initially were thinking about doing Isle Delfino DLC, but we decided to make it into its own experience in Bowser's Fury. Like, I guess the other thing to consider, right? Regardless of whether the supposed canned Isle Delfino DLC didn't amount to Bowser's Fury, like regardless of what that was or wasn't, because Bowser's Fury exists, the premise of us getting another like expansion mini 3D Mario adventure a year removed from a new 3D Mario just seems like a major stretch to me. So I don't believe that.
I don't believe it at all.
So if we don't get Mario Odyssey DLC and we don't get a 2D Mario, which I'm not saying we won't get a 2D Mario, I'm simply saying that, you know, we're not sure.
Might not.
Yeah, we might not. What else can they do to sort of have something Mario related in this year? And two options come to mind to me. Or three. One option is they just don't.
They just don't.
They just don't.
No Mario.
That's it. They just don't. They got a Mario movie. Isn't that Mario hype enough? And then next year they bring on the 3D Mario hype, and that's it. And it's really not anything more complicated than that. And there's your answer. Honestly, that might be my prediction, sadly. But another consideration.
Yeah.
Go on.
I mean, like, I wanted to bring up the point that I was going to say earlier. It's just that I think 3D Mario and the movie makes so much sense for promotion because you're obviously exploring like a 3D environment. They're doing like 3D platforming and 3D exploration. That's like the point of the movie. And I think 2D Mario, you know, obviously they'd market each other because they're both Mario. But I don't think it'd be that much better marketing for the movie and the game than like a big Mario spin-off, like a Mario RPG or like Mario Kart does. Like, not that much. Obviously, there's a platformer, so it's more, but it's not like a 3D platform would be. I feel like those feed off of themselves very, very well. So, I don't know. If they don't have a 3D platformer ready, does it really matter if they have a 2D one ready either? I don't know. It's very different. But
There's
I feel like
Mario
at
games
least
already
there's
on
platforming
Switch.
there.
Yeah. There's a lot of Mario games already on Switch. So, you know, they could just, hey, there's Mario games on Switch, enjoy. Which they're kind of doing, actually. That email that I made a video on it, right? But in my video, I specified that I don't think it's for Mario Odyssey 2. But, you know, you never know.
I didn't think that either when I saw that. I just thought that they were showing off Mario because the movie.
Right, and maybe it's that simple. Like, that email is like, yeah, we're gonna bring up different Mario games. We're gonna remind you, hey, look, there's this Mario stuff. Yeah, I know you're excited for the Mario movie. You can play this Mario game. There you go. Here's an idea, actually. Here's a nice, neat little idea. What if they make Mario 64 and Sunshine and Galaxy available on the eShop, and they release Galaxy 2?
I mean, to be something, I guess.
It would be something.
It'd be better than nothing, I guess.
Well, what if they did that as a consolation prize after they announced the next Mario at E3? So think of it like this: they can announce the next Mario, show very little, and they don't even have to specify the platform. They don't have to do that. Now, if they don't specify the platform, you know we're going to be hawking that and be like, oh, they didn't have the Switch logo. You know what that means. But more likely, I think it would still be for Switch. I think it would just be a cross-gen thing. And the way I actually envision it, call me crazy, but remember when they showed us the very first trailer for Breath of the Wild when we just called it Zelda U? When we saw those sprawling green hills and that beautiful fog. And
we saw the Guardian. And
we saw the farmers and these it was just like the most amazing thing we saw, because it was like, whoa, this is like true next-gen Zelda, and it looks incredible. Like, what if they give us that moment for Mario? Like, how cool would that be? They could do that at the C3, and a moment like that, I think, would really excite people, because it would in some ways be a celebration of Mario. And it could even be a scenario where, like, maybe they show off the Mushroom Kingdom again. Like, I keep going back to that poster, and I brought this up in a few videos, and I've seen some comments saying, "Oh, there's no way that the poster is teasing a game." I don't think it's like saying, "Hey, the next game is gonna look like this poster." But what if they show something that is like that kind of awe-inspiring, like that initial Zelda trailer? Or like that poster where they show us this massive Mario world. It's like just a few seconds. It's something that's just kind of like whoa, okay, Mario's officially announced. We know they're working on it. They don't give us a time frame or anything like that. They just show us a few seconds, and that's kind of like to hype us up. And then, you know, they just market their other Mario games. Maybe they put out Galaxy 2 on the eShop, and there you go.
I mean, they could do that. I mean, they showed off. One of the very first games we saw for Switch was Mario Odyssey, and we barely even knew what it was. We just knew there was a Mario game on the next platform.
I remember that trailer, and
footage.
People still think people don't know it's fake.
So many people thought all the footage in that was fake, and not it was all real. All those games came out.
I say it's common sense, right? But there's a lot of people that were arguing against. I think some people just refuse to believe that Nintendo could do anything really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to believe after the Wii U that Nintendo was gonna have Skyrim and everything on their system. So
it was like a dream come true. Like when you coming off of the
Yeah.
Wii U, it's like, and people kept swearing that it had to be like the original Skyrim version. Like, no, that looks like the remastered version. Has all the same assets and stuff. No, that can't be. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy how that all came to be.
I think they could show it, but I do feel like they won't show Mario because they didn't even show Mario Odyssey until they showed the Switch, right? We saw the console and then we saw Mario. I think we'll see a similar thing. Like, I don't think they're going to show off the next Mario game because I think it's going to be like the big launch game. It's going to come out for Switch as well, but I think this is going to be like the first game optimized with like the Switch 2 in mind. So I don't think it's going to be something they want to show outside the context of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I see.
I feel like they want to show it first on the Switch.
And with that in mind, it makes me think that maybe there's some hope for another franchise to show up on Switch before next year. And I'm talking about Donkey Kong. But before we get into that, let me just kind of check on the chat here because I feel like I haven't come back for a while. And I want to go into more detail about this Donkey Kong thing.
Yeah. I love Donkey Kong.
DK.
Donkey Kong. DK. Donkey Kong is here. Anyways.
And thank you for that beautiful serenade. Josh Coleman, have you or Brandon watched the Last of Us HBO show? Brandon has.
Yes, I have seen the first episode, and I'm going to watch the second one tonight.
Nice.
Pretty hyped. It's really good so far. Well, I mean, the first episode was really good. It was like an hour, 20 minutes or something. It was amazing.
Nice.
So, literally no complaints so far.
I got a super chat here from Samuel A. Thank you very much for the super chat, Samuel. Samuel asks, how likely do you think the Kid Icarus Uprising port is?
I mean, you've been saying it way before anybody even was saying Kid Icarus.
The moment we saw that back, okay,
though.
First of all, for years I've been thinking they should, because it's like that one 3DS game that would benefit so much from a remaster. But the moment we saw that initial Bandai Namco job listing where Nintendo's commissioning them to make a 3D action remaster, I was like, that's Kid Icarus Uprising. That is definitely not Star Fox Adventures. That is definitely not Star Fox Assault. They are not remaking Star Fox. The game has been reimagined and remastered more than any other game in existence. It is going to be Kid Icarus Uprising.
That game is only reimaginings.
And then recently Sakurai just said, wouldn't it be nice if they ported Kid Icarus Uprising? Huh? You mean the guy that teased Luigi's Mansion 3? I think
I didn't remember him teasing that.
Okay, so all right.
What's the story with that?
All right, so I'm assuming it was a hardcore tease for Luigi's Mansion 3. Some people may argue otherwise, but
you're talking about Smash.
I'm prepared to fight to the death on this. With not enough evidence, but I think just one piece that's compelling enough. Luigi's Mansion 3 came out what year, Brandon?
2019.
What month?
October.
Okay. And when did Super Smash Bros. Ultimate come out?
December 2018.
So, from the sounds of it, it sounds like, based off your understanding, these games came about 10 months apart from each other. Is that correct?
Something about there.
Something about there, give or take. Okay. Well, what if I told you that in the lead up to the release of Smash Brothers, there were several characters that were announced during different directs and presentations, and each one had a particular significant trailer that placed a particular emphasis on a character outside of the characters announced. And one of them just so happened to be a fairly significant sort of a little adventure for Luigi with his poltergeist going throughout a haunted castle.
Yes, I remember. They even showed off his whole design in that, didn't they? Or part of his new design.
Yeah, he had a plunger. And then this plunger was a new mechanic that was used in Luigi's Mansion 3 that came out just 10 months after the release for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now you tell me, was that not a tease? An entire
you telling me, Judge?
That
Your
was
Honor,
a tease, bro.
Was that not a tease?
They literally showed off a new mechanic in the game.
I say, Sakurai's guilty.
Yeah, so you got the history. You got Sakurai saying, wouldn't it be nice? You got the literally Kid Icarus Uprising is like the game that needs to get put on a traditional console, because what held back Kid Icarus Uprising from arguably being the best game on 3DS? So it's already in that conversation, I would argue. But was the controls. The controls just were not the way the game was designed. Like, they tried to make it work on the touchscreen, but they released a little like stand apparatus so you could play the game with a stand holding the 3DS, so you could use the controls by holding just one of it, and then you would use a stylus while it's suspended nearby the stand. They released that because of how bad the controls were. Now, in part, the issue of the controls had to do with the ergonomics of the 3DS itself. There's a few reasons why that exists, and there was also the boat. They added more control options. Point is, though, Kid Icarus Uprising was held back by the controls on the 3DS. But if it was made for Switch, or Switch 2, whatever it ends up being on a system that has traditional controls so you can fully utilize the game in the way it should be played, and also with a better online infrastructure so you can take advantage of the actually fairly robust online multiplayer system, you could make for an amazing game. And for the visual of the game was actually
graphics,
one of the best looking games on 3DS. So imagine if that was remastered, they could make a pretty looking game. So
I would hope it would go like for almost a remake. Like, I think most of the assets could do with being remade, but they have that with that Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition treatment. It probably should be enough.
Yeah, I think that's enough. I'm not expecting like
I do think the game deserves to be like fully remade, because it is one of the best looking games on 3DS, but it's also like one of the most. It's like highly ambitious, so I don't think it would hold up. Most of the assets would hold up very well, like at all, on an HD display.
From a visual perspective, if it just got like a Twilight Princess HD treatment, would that be enough?
Not even close, I don't think.
If you just upscale it visually to 1080p,
I think most of the assets
with entirely new HD textures, that wouldn't be enough.
I don't think it would look good. I mean, it would look extremely low polygon and like low detailed, like.
Yeah,
I think
it would need new models as well, and throw in some new lighting and particle effects too.
I think the character models would hold up, but I think the environment models would not. Especially when they have like the big, large scale ones where you're just like flying. Most of that stuff's just like 2D art in the background.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, but anyways, I think Kid Icarus Uprising. Whatever, like, I think it is being reworked by Bandai Namco, the team that worked with Sakurai throughout the Smash Bros. Games, and I think they are reworking his game that he teased when he has a history of teasing things. So yes, I do. I'm like not. I'm scared to say the number, but I'm gonna say the number, and if I'm wrong, I will die on this hill. 99% likely. That's how much I believe it. I believe it that much. But could it be canceled? 20%. I think it's going to happen, though.
Can you remind me exactly what you're talking about? I got distracted by something.
Literally, we've been talking about the last 5 minutes. Because Samuel asked me how likely do I think the Kid Icarus Uprising port is. Really likely. I said 99%. I know.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I probably should have said 90, but...
I mean, a lot of people think it could happen. I'm not against it. My confidence, I trust Andres, so 75%.
That's great. Thank you.
It was gonna be 50-50, but I'll trust you and put it up.
I appreciate that.
Because
it is just speculation, right? It's not based off inside information. It's purely all public knowledge.
Also, with what Sakurai said, makes it a lot more likely.
Yeah,
I guess.
Sock Bomber 3. Imagine the next Nintendo Direct isn't until March. You think Tears of the Kingdom Mario movie would be the reason why? I mean, I think if they do a Tears of the Kingdom Direct in February, then yeah, I could see us waiting till March for a Nintendo Direct. But there's gonna be a Direct in February, and I don't just think
I
it'll
wouldn't
be the
even
Mario
be
one.
mad. I would not be mad, actually, if they just did a Direct for Tears of the Kingdom in February and wait till March to do a General Direct.
Yeah, I'm okay
But
with
I don't
that.
think so.
Yeah.
You gotta remember, they're actually doing E3 this year as well, so they don't want to have the Direct like too late into the year, because they're gonna want to talk about stuff again
they've
just a few
had
months
Directs
later.
in March, and they still have an E3. Like in 2018, they had a Direct Mini in January, then they had a Nintendo Direct in March, and then they had their E3 Direct.
Well, yes, but that was also they had a lot of Directs that year.
Yeah, it was
They
the
have more
first
Directs than
full
usual that
year
year.
of Switch. Like they had the
Yeah,
launch year of 2017, which started March, and then 2018 was their first full year, and I think they were still figuring out the marketing cycle for everything.
So they normally definitely would not have a mini Direct and then a full one either.
Yeah.
Like, that was a big, like they had so many Directs that year. It's a big deal.
All right,
I don't think they'll do that again though.
No.
This year at least.
No, I don't think so. I think more likely February. Sock and Bomber 3. Imagine next Nintendo Direct isn't until March. You think Tears of the Kingdom or Mario movie would be the reason? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I already got to that question.
You just read that.
I just read that. I read it again. Sorry. Joyce J. So jump on the hype for the Mario movie. Next Direct would be a good time to announce a new game. No dates or big trailers, just an announcement that'll work. I hope they give us a 2D Mario. I really do. But if we don't get a Mario game, Donkey Kong might be our guy. Samuel A. I know the reports say mid-2024, but if they're talking pre-production now, it would come out holiday 2023 or early 2020 because prices can change a lot. I hope. The Joker. Do you think they'd show a trailer for a Mario game before the Mario movie in theaters as part of the movie previews? No. I mean, that it's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because, like, why would you distract from other things Mario? Let's just focus on the Mario movie for now. But come June time, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Diego Z. Castro. Sorry you're late. No worries. I'm glad you're here, though. Thanks for stopping by.
How dare you? I'm not. I don't forgive you.
Well, Brandon's a crusty crab. Melfice. I say give us a Mario RPG 2 for the Switch as a launch title. I'll buy it.
Nah, that'd be something, you know.
Yeah.
Hardcore fans would be losing their minds.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't think that would do nearly as the numbers of a 3D Mario, though, obviously.
Glucose Guard. The Bandai remake was for Baton Kaitos. So I hope not, but I did see that report. We don't know how likely that report is. Also, Monolith Soft would be working on it too, and could you call that a 3D action remaster? It's an RPG.
I don't know. I'm not sure how Baden Kaitos plays, to be honest.
It's an RPG.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Probably not a 3D
Well,
action
I mean,
game. I mean, could you consider Xenoblade a 3D action game? Sort of.
Bad
It's action in the 3D space. But no, I wouldn't call that an action game usually.
Baton Kaitos Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean is a 2003 role-playing video game developed by Monolith Soft. So, I don't know. Although, yeah, I wouldn't consider it a 3D action
Why
game.
wouldn't they be working with Bandai if they have Monolith doing it? I guess they need... I feel like Monolith's just one of those teams, just like... They're big enough to do things themselves.
I don't know. I mean, if that's what we get, I'll play
Usually
it.
they're the ones helping other people.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just more of a overseeing role, though.
Yeah, maybe. But I just have a hard time thinking they would want to remaster this of all the games they could be remastering.
It is Xenogears or Xenocross instead, or Xenosaga, I mean.
Yeah. It is a report that's out there by a site, but We'll see. All right, so let's get into the next. Well, one last thing here. Guy, you don't know, the way you described an awe-inspiring reveal for a next-gen Mario game is pretty similar to how I felt when Odyssey was announced. It felt like a big leap for Mario after many years. I mean, Brandon kind of alluded to that. It was a big thing. I want to see another big thing. Not so glad you agree that the Smash Luigi trailer was definitely a Luigi's Mansion 3 tease. So let's move on here, right? So if we're not going to get a Mario game this year, I do think that increases the chances for Donkey Kong. Because I think that if you're going to have Donkey Kong in the Mario movie, and you're not going to have the Mario platformer, it opens up a nice little window for Donkey Kong, another Nintendo platformer, to come out and take some of the spotlight. And it could actually be a nice hold me over until Mario. Like, I think that might be a pretty good way to go about doing it. Like, I think you would argue that 2D Mario makes more sense. If it's one or the other. I mean, I'd rather get both. But if there's no Mario, I feel like Donkey Kong would happen. I have a hard time believing that we don't get anything new Mario and anything new Donkey Kong this year.
Like,
right?
Nothing related to any of the characters in the movie.
Yeah. Like, it would be so weird, like, to not do any of that. So, if there isn't a Mario game, I'd say we at least have the Donkey Kong game to look forward to. I don't know this. That's just my speculation. I do believe the Donkey Kong game is real from what I've been told in the past and from what I've heard and seen and what's been reported. But, when it comes out, it's hard to say. But I do think we are entering, like, I think we should sit with the next 2 years simply based off the movie and the theme park that they planned. Like, I think that the Donkey Kong game is supposed to be part of that marketing. Where it fits into the timeline of that marketing, that's why I'm not sure when it comes out. But
I feel like it's gonna be after the Mario game, because we're getting the Mario movie first. We got the Mario part of the Universal Studios rides first, the park first. We're getting Donkey Kong after. It just makes sense to do Donkey Kong game after the Mario game. I don't think it's going to come out this year.
Okay.
I do think it's going to be next year, probably the year after. But is it possible?
Wait, you just said you think it's going to be next year, probably the year after.
Yeah, for Donkey Kong.
You think was
next year or the year after?
Or the year after. Okay. Yeah.
More likely the year after, to be honest.
Sure.
Because we're already thinking, like, we don't even know if the 3D Mario is going to come out this year or next year. So.
Yeah. Now, I want to say this. I'll argue that while I think that if there's no Mario this year, it increases the chances for us to get Donkey Kong, because I just have a hard time believing we don't get either this year. I'll also argue that I can see a year where we get both, because I don't think Donkey Kong is that similar to Mario where you can't get away with having both in a year. Maybe not right next to each other, side by side, like month to month, but in different halves of the year. I can see that, especially if one's a 3D Mario and others a 2D Donkey Kong, or the other way around. If one's a 3D Donkey Kong and a 2D Mario, like, I think you could separate that by a few months and they can both do well. I think
it's possible. I just don't think it's optimal. I think it is better to put those out space them out a little more. Especially, it depends on what they do with Donkey Kong as well, right? Because we don't think it's going to be another, like, standard country game. Like, there's a lot of rumors that it's like a new thing, like start a new series. What if it actually, like, follows more of, like, the movie? I don't think it would, but it might follow more of the design from the movie. I think that's possible, but I think more likely is it might have more to do with Mario in general, since they seem to be wanting to tie Mario more directly to Donkey Kong in this game, and this movie, I mean.
Yeah, it's interesting, because Taker actually just provided us with another super chat. Thank you very much for the super chat, Taker. And Taker says, what if the new 3D Mario includes playable Donkey Kong?
They could do that as well.
Yeah.
Bringing the great Mario more and Donkey Kong. I mean, we
tell
saw
you
that
that-
with Odyssey. There was a lot of Mario or Donkey Kong references. I mean,
I'm gonna say the new Mario doesn't have playable Donkey Kong, just because I feel like Donkey Kong should be its own thing. But
yeah.
if it's a part of a branding change to have Donkey Kong and Mario feel like they're more a part of each other's universes, okay, maybe. But also, like,
What if there was a moment where you could like Cappy control Donkey Kong?
oh, like possessed?
Yeah. Like you do with Yoshi. Or Bowser.
I don't like. I mean, it's cool, but like if we get another Mario game that has Cappy in it, I want to just be able to ride Yoshi like normal. I don't want to have to possess Yoshi again. Like there are things you ride, like no, like there's a Sphinx, you just ride it. Yoshi's something you ride, right? Yoshi's a mount. But Donkey Kong's a little different, so I wouldn't be opposed to controlling Donkey Kong in that way. But it would be one of those things where I'd be like, oh, this is cool, but I want a real Donkey Kong game. You know, like that'll be the common sentiment if they were to do that. Like, okay, this is neat, but I want a real Donkey Kong game.
Yeah, I think it would be followed by a new Donkey Kong though, within like a year or two.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, I was making the argument that if we don't get anything Mario this year, we get Donkey Kong. You just said that you don't think Donkey Kong.
Do not agree.
You do not agree.
I don't think Donkey Kong's coming this year either way.
Regardless. Okay.
Yeah. Irregardless or regardless, I don't think it's
I
happening.
get what you're saying. Yeah. So, got another super chat here from Taker. Thank you very much for the super chat, Taker. Taker says, I think 3D Donkey Kong can't stand on its own. Donkey Kong 64? So, Donkey Kong 64 was kind of a mess from a gameplay perspective. Wasn't reviewed well.
Wasn't really just because it was Donkey Kong,
Yeah,
though. It was the decisions made around like the collectibles mostly.
Yeah. I still love Donkey Kong 64 because I played as a kid. I didn't care. But, you know, I think the reason Donkey Kong 64 didn't succeed, to Brand's point, has more to do with other decisions, not Donkey Kong itself. Jack Donovan, when do we think we're getting that next Direct? Well, Brand and I talked about this next week. We think it's either happening...
Talked about last week, you mean?
Yeah, isn't that what I said?
No, you said next week.
Did I? Yeah,
I said we talked about it next week.
Well, I meant last week. And
see,
last week we agreed that the windows were between February 7th to the 9th or February 14th to the 16th. I think Brandon is going with February
7th.
Going in 7th, and I'm going the opposite end. I'm going with February 16th.
Yep.
So, but we have,
So
there's
when
like
it comes
6
on the
days we think are
7th,
really
you
likely.
can thank me. And when it doesn't, don't yell at me, please.
Yeah. So, I was talking about Donkey Kong from an angle of it coming out this year. But, Brandon, I will say that before this conversation started, I was definitely thinking Donkey Kong has a chance for this year, and I think I put it in my predictions, but I've said that I'm like 50-50 on it. I think it's Donkey Kong either this year or next year. Why do I think that? I just think it's about time. I think, you know, but I come at it from the perspective of I think Donkey Kong should come out sooner if they want to take advantage of the Mario movie hype, to push its sales, and also to have a game already established and relevant so people have a reason to go to the theme park and be excited for Donkey Kong. I mean, Donkey Kong has a history, so I think it'll work regardless, but to keep Donkey Kong more fresh and in that conversation, following it up with a game makes sense. Like, so if I mean, it could go either way. It could still happen in 2020. It could still happen next 2024, I guess, because the Donkey Kong expansion is supposed to happen next year, right?
In Japan, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess it depends on the lineup of things, right? Because like we like to think of things as like a per year basis, but I'm just trying to think of it as in terms of Nintendo keeping like Donkey Kong relevant, right? So like you have the movie now, it's coming out in April,
Right.
and then the expansion's happening hopefully early 2025. So I think it comes out sometime between the release of this movie in April and sometime before the release of the expansion in early 2025, which, you know, leaves us open for this year or next year. So, you know, there you go. But it could happen in either. That's what
I don't know.
Yeah. But also, you know, I'm assuming that the game has to come up before the expansion, because I feel like it makes sense to kind of keep the conversation going about Donkey Kong for longer, and also
It makes sense, but I don't think it needs to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the same reason how we've also talked about how they don't actually have to give us a Mario game this year. You're right. They don't have to do these things. I think sometimes we fall into a little bit of a trap of thinking, yeah, this makes sense, this is what they should do, but they don't really need to, right? Like, here's another example. We go to the Switch 2 stuff, right? And I think 2023 makes a lot of sense. You think 2023 makes a lot of sense. But just because we think it makes sense, and just because we think Nintendo needs to beat the momentum drop to the chase, doesn't mean they can't get away with waiting 6 months to a year longer. Same reason why we thought, man, they really should have told us more information about Tears of the Kingdom by this point. But
no.
But in reality, Nintendo hasn't given us information yet, and maybe it won't matter. Like, we think, oh man, this isn't good for marketing, but that's an assumption based off what we've understood from the past. Nintendo probably has a much better understanding of what impacts their numbers, their hits. Like, I'm sure they have analysts that look at how often their websites are looked at, look at how often their videos are shared and watched, look at how many people buy games or consider games and things of that nature on the eShop, reading details. Like, they probably have all that data, all those analytics.
Oh, yeah.
And they're probably able to come up with a much better understanding of how badly waiting this long impacts their releases. They may realize, you know, from looking at all their numbers and having their analysts work on it, hey, you know what? For these particular games that seem to drill up a lot of attention regardless of when there's an announcement or not, the longer you wait without talking about it, the better. And what kind of games are those? Zelda, Metroid. Like, those games that aren't used to having these, like... The Metroid's not as big. It's, you know, tiers, right? But Mario also falls into that camp, too, where the conversations on these games are kind of consistent, and they're not as dependent upon incoming news for that conversation to go. The longer they go without talking about it, the more needy we get, right? The more theorizing come out. So it actually helps.
We just market it for them,
right? So there is that to kind of consider. That can impact things. And anyways, I just bring all this up because, you know, we make assumptions. We make assumptions and we think something has to happen before, when it doesn't always. So, you know, I think a lot of people are looking at the Switch 2 situation and thinking, man, Nintendo's really shooting themselves in the foot here. And they might be. You know, we saw them screw it up with the Wii, and we could attribute part of that to them taking too long to move on. That could be the case, but you know what? There's also probably several reasons why they failed with the Wii. Because one difference between the Wii and the Switch is that the Wii had a significant drop-off of momentum very early on. Switch has been maintaining its momentum. We're going into year 7, and we still haven't seen a price drop. So it's still a very different circumstance. Momentum's still going, software is still strong. We're not even close to how bad things were with the Wii. But,
we good.
You know, like, I think it makes sense to maintain the momentum. The question is, will there be like this huge drop-off this year? I mean, you know, based off the reports, we're a year and a half away. That's fine. They'll fine.
I mean, if it's a year and a half, I don't mind.
Yeah. Gives us more time to save up money. So, anyway, we've talked about Donkey Kong, right? It's really tough to say when it happens, because the other angle here is that maybe they want to save Donkey Kong for the next system. But I'll say this, right? We're talking about these things. We're like, oh, maybe Mario doesn't happen. Maybe Donkey Kong doesn't happen. And a thought that comes to mind is what Andy Robinson and a few others said recently, that Tears of the Kingdom might be the last major Switch game. And I personally have a hard time believing that Nintendo would have us go almost a year without any other quality releases. Could they just bombard us with remasters, you know, between June and like May or of next year, or like for a whole year and nothing else?
Yes. It'd be like the worst year other than the fact that Tears of the Kingdom came out in the Switch's life, pretty much.
I think they've just done such a good job of maintaining momentum. It would be a real shame for them to just kind of fall off of it for whatever reason. And I'm okay with the remasters. I'm not saying I want my F-Zero remaster. I want my Metroid Prime remaster. Heck, if there's a Bad Kaidos remaster, give me that too. Same thing with Kid Icarus. I want these things. But I also want your Pikmin Force. I want your Donkey Kongs. So, you know, give us some new stuff too. And also, by the way, some of these remasters may have new content in them, right? Like let's also keep that in mind. Like this F-Zero thing, if it's a remaster, it may give us new content. There may be online play. It may be in some ways almost be something that functions as if like a new release, even though it's based off an old game. Because it has that additional, kind of like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, right? Like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has enhancements, new content, and it stayed relevant for years. So they can do things like that to kind of give us something. So I think Nintendo's gonna give us something. It may not be something that sells 10 plus million. Maybe, you know, Tears of the Kingdom is the last big game that's expected to sell 10 plus million until summer next year, which is a whole year without a 10 million plus seller, which that still makes me kind of
Would still be a long time.
skeptical that they would do. Oh, but let's think about that for a moment though. Do we have like is there a website where we can look at the timeline for every major Switch game? Like, oh, that's the well, I could just look at the top selling Switch games, and we can kind of gauge it from there. Okay, so what was the largest gap, right? So in 2017 there were several, right? 2018 we had Pokemon Let's Go, Smash, you know, and those weren't too far removed from the 2017 games, and there was still Kirby Star Allies that came out that year, right? So that was a pretty decent seller too. 2019 had Luigi's Mansion and Pokemon Sword and Shield, and oh heck, Mario Party was also a 2018 release. So you had Let's Go, Mario Party, and Smash. They were all like 10 plus million sellers in 2018. Yeah. 2019, Luigi's Mansion and Sword and Shield, as I said. 2020 was the pandemic year, but that still had Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing.
Still had Animal Crossing. And that was a DLC year for Pokemon. That might have been... Well, Super Mario 3D All-Star still sold 9 million. So there's that. And
yeah,
I'm trying to see any major 2020. Well, Clubhouse Games sold 4 million, which is pretty substantial. Is there anything else in 2020? I mean, that was kind of it for 2020 in terms of like the major releases. I'm trying to see if I find anything else.
2020 was a slow year though, in general.
It was COVID year. Well, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity actually sold, well, according to Wiki, 24 million. I'm surprised it's only sold that much. How old is this information? Since early last year. Well, okay, that's still a significant number though. All right, and then 2021. What were the 2021 major releases that sold a lot? Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, 15 million. 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, 9.43 million. It's probably maybe at 10 already. Let's see, what else in 2021? Mario Party Superstars at 8 million. Some of these numbers may be a little outdated, just for the record, but Monster Hunter Rise also at 7.7 million.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah. So 2021 had a major. It was really only 2020, which still had some stuff, and that was the COVID year. And then 2022, well, 2022 just happened, right? But we got Splatoon 3 and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus. So there you go. Like, so they, like, excluding 2020, which is the pandemic year, they've had multiple huge sellers, and even 2020 had Animal Crossing New Horizons, the best-selling game on Switch. Like, they haven't gone a whole year without having something that's going to sell a ridiculous amount. So we hear these Switch reports, like, Tears of the Kingdom is coming out in May, and my belief is that when they say mid 2024, I don't think that means June. I think that probably means more like July or August. You know, if they end up like coming out sooner, great. But if we're already talking about like a first half of the year, you might as well be targeting to close up the fiscal year at that point. But so when I hear mid, I think past fiscal year, and also I think the weird thing about getting it out by the end of the fiscal year is that means you have to announce it ahead of time, and announcing it in January seems a little awkward right after the holiday sales. Announcing before the holiday I also think is a little awkward because you're trying to sell things. So I just think that it has to be kind of like late summer or a little bit later, so that we're talking about like a whole year between Tears of the Kingdom when we're assuming the next 3D Mario comes out for this new system. So I just, that would be the longest gap of a major seller. Now, Nintendo can do things that will come out that don't have to be major sales. They have all these evergreen titles. They can do the price drop.
Yeah, I mean, we already know Pikmin's coming out, so...
Yeah, well, maybe Pikmin 4 is going to sell 50 million copies. Maybe Pikmin 4 is like the next Fortnite.
Oh, it sell a couple million at least?
Couple billion, you mean?
No!
Yeah. So, I mean, is there anything that you think that could come out that would rival some of the top-selling games on Switch? Donkey Kong is something. I think Donkey Kong
obviously
like 5
if we
million,
have
maybe.
Yeah, Donkey Kong is a good one. I don't know how much like Tropical Freeze sold. I think it sold like
a million,
couple million. Yeah.
But it was an old
Not
game.
much.
I think like a brand new game, it would be different.
I think a new one could sell a lot.
Those games
yeah, I think a Donkey Kong could sell like a couple million, maybe like up to 5 million. 2D Mario obviously can sell like a ton.
Yeah, new 2D Mario I think would be the kind of game that would do it. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. I think Pikmin has a chance of selling a couple million. I see a million or two from Pikmin. Hopefully.
Some people think a Pokemon game is coming out this holiday. It's not happening.
No, it's gonna be DLC most likely.
Yeah.
Hopefully a big patch that improves that game.
We could have our Pokemon spin-off though, like Detective Pikachu. That's been
confirmed. Detective Pikachu 2. Maybe that could be done.
Maybe we'll get like a Pokken tournament too. That would be cool. So there's room for a Pokemon spin-off that may do pretty well, but like a mainline Pokemon game, no. There's a lot of DLC planned, So, you know, you could make the argument that Nintendo has a lot of smaller things that are gonna help tide us over between the DLC and a lot of remasters. But I feel like they gotta have at least one, and maybe it is that 2D Mario, you know, to kind of help bridge that gap. As we talked about earlier, maybe it comes out like late summer, early fall or something, or maybe it's a holiday release and it's just it's maybe about 9 months removed from when the system comes out with 3D Mario. So it's enough of a gap where it's like a healthy gap between major Mario releases, but it's also its own thing for the holidays. It's a big release. It's really cool, and it'll help to push sales alongside Tears of the Kingdom, along with a whole bunch of other smaller cool little things.
It wouldn't be a bad year.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that 2D Mario is the most likely big seller between Tears of the Kingdom and the next system, or are we looking at nothing or something else?
I mean, we're going with the assumption that the console comes out next year and that it launches with 3D Mario. Then I feel like a 2D Mario is probably the biggest option available. Just straight up. Because we don't have like Animal Crossing or Mario Kart or Smash or any of those other games. Those are not options. I feel like the biggest hitter that's even an option would be 2D Mario, given the restraints that I mentioned previously.
Yeah, assuming the Switch is taking that long to come out, the next one. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything that would even rival it, because, you know, like, we got Zelda, so they do have, like, their biggest game is coming out this year. Like, even if it's not going to sell the most units, like, Zelda is their biggest, most hyped franchise. Like, it just is. Mario is definitely, like, right neck and neck with there. But I think in terms of just what generates the most hype, I don't think anything beats Zelda. I don't think anything beats Tears of the Kingdom. There isn't a bigger, more high-profile release, so they do have that going for this year. Maybe they wouldn't think that they need, like, to come and just bring it with the biggest games in the holiday as well. Maybe they just need, like, a 2D Zelda. Or a 2D Zelda? No. A 2D Mario, I mean, to hold us over.
I mean, when I think about, like, what they could do that kind of tide us over, from a sales perspective, 2D Mario would do the trick. Alongside Tears of the Kingdom, but then you have Pikmin 4, you announced Metroid Prime HD, you have some other quality remasters, you have all the DLC. If you throw in maybe like a Donkey Kong or some other sort of B tier, I don't like using these letter names because it's like I'm kind of scoffing at these I love Donkey Kong. Like, right. I'm there day one. Like, I think Tropical Freeze is like one of the best, if not the best 2D like game period. But I just mean like the lower tier titles that aren't considered the big releases, like a Pikmin 4 and Donkey Kong alongside 2D Mario as like the new Nintendo projects, not counting remasters or DLC between Tears of the Kingdom and the next system. That might be what they need. Throw in a Pokemon spin-off, like, yeah.
I don't know, because I think that works for like the rest of this year. Maybe this fiscal year, but I don't necessarily think it works all the way up till like mid next year. Like,
I'm assuming we're getting things like F-Zero, maybe throw in Kid Icarus. Maybe that finally happens. I mean,
yeah, because I could see like that happening all of this year.
I don't think we get it all.
And then you're trying to tell me,
year.
Or like, I don't know.
I think
it would be
trickles into early next year.
Maybe light. I don't know. It's weird because it's not like Nintendo hasn't been afraid to release just new titles and things. Like Splatoon 3 could like just came out. Really didn't think that was going to come out on the Switch.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, they are not afraid of putting out games on the Switch, even if they typically, you would think, oh, they would wait for Switch 2. So why would they have this dead period after Tears of the Kingdom, where there's just not much coming out, if they're not even, like, saving something like Tears of the Kingdom for this next system? They're not saving Splatoon 3 for this next system. They're obviously not doing Mario Kart with this next system because we got the DLC. So
it's also
why even have this big dead period? Because what games are you holding over for the system? Like, you already released all these games. Like, you got Zelda. Like, other than Mario, you got, like, Pikmin. You got Splatoon. You got all these big titles.
I guess you're just thinking, like, what happens after Mario? Like, what is their follow-up software, right? Like, yeah, you can launch with Mario, but what comes afterwards?
What's that follow-up software that caused you a year of pretty much, like slow content? Like, what?
Well, one thing to point out is that team that made Mario Kart 8 initially and ARMS hasn't come out with a project yet. I believe that project is probably being saved for the next system. Monolith Soft, we've talked about that new IP for years. Maybe they've been working on that in tandem to the other things, and that's being saved for the next system too. Metroid Prime 4, I think it'll be probably cross-gen. That's maybe, being geared up for hopefully a holiday release next year, 2024, so like a year and 10 months from now. Like, those are all games. And then by 2024, we're gonna get a new Pokemon game, by the way. So
it's just not adding up to me to make sense for next year. Like, why is there this gap? Why are you waiting to the middle of next year to release a system then? If you need this gap, why not release the system this year?
Because they're not ready.
And they
just want to sell as much Switches as they can.
I guess, but my thing is just like, why aren't you ready? My question is like, why would you be ready in the middle of next year? It's just a weird time.
I think
Like,
the other thing is that okay, well maybe the mid-year
nothing
thing is
about
not
this
true.
makes any sense.
You don't think mid-year makes sense?
No.
Well, you also don't think Tears of the
I also
Kingdom
don't
May
think
makes sense.
waiting a whole year to release your next major game makes any sense either.
Yeah,
I also
I
don't
don't believe that. That's why we're talking about it. Like, I think we at least get 2D Mario between, like, something to that level.
Right, but it doesn't fit the rumors. If that happens, then the rumors are not true. Just straight up, I don't think both of those can be true.
I think people offer
not giving us like hardly anything, but
Yeah.
also we're getting stuff. Like the rumor is that we're essentially just going to be like mostly small stuff until the console comes out. I don't know. I don't think that's happening. I don't really, but to be honest, the more I talk about like these rumors, the less I believe them and the less they make sense to me. I don't get it. I don't get the logic. You know, but Nintendo logic doesn't always make sense. Sometimes you need to see that secret piece of the puzzle that we just don't know yet, and then it will make sense. Maybe this time next year I'll be like, what a fool. You were stupid past me. You should have known. And I'll see all the stars align, but at this point, it just doesn't make sense. I don't get it.
I mean, there's always gonna be games that we're not gonna even consider that Nintendo can announce, and boom, there you go, right? Something I think is worth bringing up though, right? Because you're challenging some of these insiders and such, and I think that's fair. You should take it with a grain of salt. Do you remember early last year, if I remember correctly? Yeah, it was before Mario Booster Course Pass was announced. Before that was announced, there were analysts saying, "Oh yes, the next Mario Kart is in development." And then like a month later, Nintendo announces Booster Course Pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And the Booster Course Pass was meant to last 2 whole extra years. Like they pretty much just poo-pooed on what those analysts were saying, you know.
Pretty much.
And it's entirely feasible. Nintendo's gonna do something that's gonna poo-poo on whatever, you know, reports we're talking about now. Like they may very well do that. Regardless, we're getting something. Like they're gonna continue to give us content.
The most sense. I think what makes the most sense is you launch Switch 2 this year. Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom brings hype to the Switch and your brand. A few short months after that, at E3 or around E3 time, you announce the console. You start showing off the new 3D Mario. You start showing off the Tears of the Kingdom patch, which with 4K and 60 FPS. You show all these stuff off third-party games, and you lead the hype all the way through the end of the year, and you launch your console then. What doesn't make sense to me is to launch Tears of the Kingdom, not talk about your next-gen console until next year, have almost nothing come out after Tears of the Kingdom to get people hyped, so they're barely thinking about Nintendo. And then suddenly, sometime early next year, drop the bomb that the Switch 2 is coming out.
So, guy you don't know put in the chat, exactly, Brandon. Nintendo releasing a new system in mid-2024, it doesn't make sense. Which sounds like something Nintendo might do. Lol.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, Nintendo, they like to not make sense, so, you know.
Yeah, we can try and logic it out, but there's only...
At the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do when they have their own Nintendo logic.
Right. So, let's move away from this stuff. Well, let's... I also said we talked a little about Metroid, and it's been touched upon. You know, I think Metroid Prime HD is going to be a big piece to the puzzle in terms of content that comes out between Tears of the Kingdom and the next system. I think Metroid Prime HD, you know, like we talked about, it's meant to be like a big boy remaster supposedly, right? And if that's the case, like that's something that could be considered like a nice quality release for this year. And I think that makes a big difference. That really helps to kind of you take in all the DLC with the Pokemons, the Xenoblades, the Fire Emblems, the Splatoons, the Mario Rabbids, I'm sure I'm missing another one. And Zelda. Like, and then you give us the Metroid Prime, you give us the Pikmin 4. If you throw in a 2D Mario, like, I think you're good for this year. I'm sure there'll be a few other little things, but like I'm just talking about like the big stuff. And then next year, what do? Maybe that's when Detective Pikachu comes out in the first half of the year. Maybe that's when they come out with the Donkey Kong game. Like, there's a few bridge title games, and then they're ready for next year, for their next system. But going back to Donkey Kong, I mean, not Donkey. The thing is, the title. I see the title right here, so Donkey Kong's there. Initially, I had Metroid there, but you know, I think Brandon, you raised a good point from earlier that after Tears of the Kingdom, then Nintendo's gonna want something at E3 to kind of hype us up, right? Something for us to get excited about. And Tears of the Kingdom comes out in May, then there's E3. But you've also brought up how, you know, it doesn't really make sense to show off Mario if it's not coming out until next year. Especially if they want to save that reveal for new hardware. So if they don't have Mario to hype us up, like a hardcore mainline 3D Mario, and they're done with Zelda, what do they have that kind of is like that big thing that the core Nintendo gamer is kind of like, I need this?
Got Metroid.
Enter Metroid Prime 4. I think.
4.
Well, I'm not saying Prime 4 comes out this year, but it's kind of like the thing that we have to sort of look forward to, speculate on, analyze, like that big project, right? Like, there's always like some big Nintendo project that's known, that's always looming, right? Like this second half of the Switch's life, it's been Tears of the Kingdom. When that's done, what big thing is there for us to, like, when we have with zero details? We have no footage on Prime, we have no footage on Mario. There's nothing to kind of like speculate upon beyond just thin air and a few cryptic interviews. So I think we're going to give us something, especially because I think Prime 4 will be ready by the end of next year, and I believe Prime HD is coming out this year. I think I could even see Prime HD getting announced in a February Direct. As I've told you before, it'll be like Skyward Sword HD that gets announced in February. They'll say they'll have more details for Breath of the Wild or the sequel, and then they'll talk about it at E3, and they did. And they'll do the same. They'll announce Prime HD in a February Direct. They'll have more details for Prime 4 later this year, and they'll show it off at E3. That's what they do.
I think.
And then that
they
gets
will
more
definitely
featured
tease
with the new hardware at the end of, and like they'll give us a teaser, and they won't talk about it again until like until a year from until like summer 2024 or something, or whenever they reveal the next system, they'll like show it off again. Then
will be. I don't know, because I have a feeling. Well, this is how I envision my perfect world. This may not be at all how it goes, because we have no idea what to the extent this remaster is. But in my head, let's set up a little scenario. Say we get Metroid Prime, the remaster, but it's not a remaster. It's actually like pretty much a remake that uses the Metroid Prime 4 engine.
Yeah.
So we can kind of use Metroid Prime as kind of like, we get to see the Metroid Prime 4 engine on Switch. But Metroid Prime 4, while I do think it's going to be cross-gen, I have a feeling it might be like a big showcase for the Switch 2, especially if it comes out like holiday 2024 and the system comes out like summer 2024. It'd be like a few months in. It'd be like that mature title a few months after to show off like graphical fidelity. It makes more sense then if it's coming like a few months after the next system to definitely be using the system's capabilities more. So I wouldn't be surprised if they show like something that's not quite like straight up gameplay, like another like tease, but we like don't see a lot, but they show off like how the game looks a lot more when they show off the next system.
Remember how I gave you the idea that maybe, remember the first time they showed off Breath of the Wild, but I was saying they do that for Mario?
Yeah.
Instead, what did they just do it for Metroid? It's like, hey, this is the world, or this is that they give us an idea of what Metroid Prime 4 will look like. Like
I don't know.
It could be something as simple as they show, maybe it's like a 30 to 45 second clip where it shows Samus's ship coming in from this atmosphere, coming through the atmosphere, lands down like she has done in a lot of other games, and then she comes out and you see her look around, It goes into revisor mode. She sees this new alien world, and then it just closes out, and it says 2024. That's it.
I could see something like that.
Or not even.
I have a feeling they want to show off the game a lot on the next system, though. So I do feel like it's that far away.
Well, it would be like a cutscene. Like I'm talking.
Yeah,
we're
like
talking
something
about
like a cutscene.
We're talking about a cutscene. It would be. What I mean, it's one of those things where like the Metroid Prime cutscenes are all in real time. They use the actual engine. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're sleeping on how good it'll look on Switch. Like I think people are underestimating just how good Metroid Prime 4 can look on Switch.
Yeah, I
It's
do
gonna
think it would look really good.
It's gonna actually be one of, if not the best looking games on Switch. There are some good looking games on Switch, and I think we lose sight of that because of all the games that don't. But there are some impressive games on Switch. Look at Kirby and the Forgotten Land, for example. Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is an amazing example.
I don't want to bring up games from 2017, but Mario Odyssey looks pretty good. Whenever you play Mario Odyssey looks
Luigi's
really
Mansion
good.
3 looks stunning. We'll
Astral
always bring
Chain
that
2.
game up.
I mean,
Astral Chain,
2.
yeah.
In my head, it's already 2, but no, Astral Chain. Yeah.
Chain.
Yeah. I don't want to bring up some like Monster Hunter Rise is another.
Slaps.
It's another impressive
That
one.
looks good.
Yeah. And if it's something that's not trying to have like a large world, that's more supposed to be a little bit like more concise,
More constrained, yeah.
like Kirby's Forgotten Land, like it looks really good. They can make something for Metroid Prime look really good, like that. So I'm not really worried about that. I think they can showcase, and they also don't have to specify what it's running. Like they'll say Switch, but I don't know. Like they don't. I think they can give us a really good looking like trailer and don't have to like say what the specs are for. They could say like footage, not game footage, not final or something. You know, like or it may not represent what the actual build is. Like they don't have to do that, and they could leave us to speculate. Oh, it looks like Switch 2 footage, and it probably isn't. The same way how they look at the clouds in Tears of the Kingdom, like, oh, those can't possibly run on Switch, except it's only coming out for Switch. Apparently.
They're just billboard clouds. They're not even as advanced as like the clouds in Xenoblade 2.
Yeah.
They're not real volumetric clouds. I think a lot of people just see things on YouTube and their minds make up, because YouTube has a lot of compression and stuff, and always getting the greatest quality. So people's minds just make things look better than they actually are because they don't see the faults. They just assume that it looks correct.
Right. Yeah. People make these assumptions. I mean, all sorts of people. We do sometimes. Yeah.
Can't say I'm not at fault for making an assumption here and there. Everybody does it.
Yeah. So let's end the poll here. Do you believe the Switch 2 reports from mid-2024? It actually went a little bit.
I didn't even vote on it, but I guess I want to skew the results.
I don't think it matters, Brandon. I think it's over. I'm pressing end poll.
I will give my opinion though after we say what
I thought you gave your opinion
the results
already.
were.
Feel free to give your updated opinion. But here are the results. Of the 171 votes that we have tallied, 57% said yes, they do believe these Switch 2 reports for mid-2024. 42 say no.
171 votes, pretty good. Thank you guys for voting.
Yeah, thank you very much, friends.
What I meant as my thoughts was like my definitive answer, I should have said.
Okay.
My yes or no.
I thought I'm pretty sure your answer is no. But what do you think?
It is no. I do not believe this. To be honest, it wasn't no the entire time though. It was just steadily has become more and more no. And now I'm just like, definitively no. So I just don't think it's happening at that time frame. I don't believe these rumors. They don't make sense to me.
Okay.
I don't.
But what does that mean? Does that mean that you just don't believe the rumors, but it could still happen then? Or do you believe that it's coming earlier? Do you think it's coming later?
I think it's most likely coming. Well, most likely, I'm more leaning towards this year. I'll say that. I'm leaning towards it coming out this year or next holiday. It could come out in the middle of the year next year for whatever reason. Could happen. Weirder things have happened, but that's not what I'm going to predict. You want to know my predictions?
Give me.
I still predict this holiday.
I hope you're right. I don't believe you're right, but I hope you're right. You could be right. I think it's still.
I want to be right. Let me be right.
I think it should be noted that both Nikkei have been wrong about things in the past, and still have Bloomberg. So,
Bloomberg was wrong about something like the other week.
This is true. So, we're going to transition to the last topic here. We're going to wrap it up. Because I said I would talk about Fire Emblem. We talked about it a little bit, but I want to close it out with some Fire Emblem talk here. But I'll check in with the chat real quick. Guy you don't know, I can definitely see Metroid Prime 4 getting a Breath of the Wild style tease like what Andres described. If we get a brief look at the art style, setting, and Samus's basic actions, I'll be satisfied. Me too! I think it'll work out really well. It'll hold us over for like 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
Alright. So, Brandon, we're moving on for all this Switch 2 and other Nintendo game stuff. Let's just focus on Fire Emblem Engage. I've been enjoying it. I've finished the first 5 chapters of the game. What questions do you have for me before we call it a night?
Okay. First question, and this is kind of the biggest one, because right now I'm quizzing you, and I'm gonna decide. No, I don't always have to decide things on the podcast, but this may or may not determine whether or not I get the game. It will at least help me decide. One of the big things about Fire Emblem is not just that I love the gameplay, because the gameplay is good and it's fun, but what mostly brings me through RPGs in general, whatever type they may be, is the story. Is the story any kind of actual unique plot that has you any kind of intrigued, or is it just a vessel for them to bring back old characters?
This is a tough question to answer because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me. So there was also kind of a loaded question. First, let me say that a part of me actually does want to tell you that the story does, in some ways so far, feel a bit like a vessel to introduce characters. But I think that this emphasis on previous Fire Emblem characters is not as great as you may have initially thought. Like, yes, they are there, they are part of the story, and they are like a huge plot point because there are 12 emblem rings, and it's kind of like the main premise of the game is to collect the 12 emblem rings. So that is there. Like, getting all 12 emblem rings will unlock a special power. Like, that is part of the story, and that, as you progress in the game, more emblem rings will be collected. And it's a battle for the rings. That's what the war is about.
Right. But
so far, I wouldn't even say like my favorite characters are Marth or what have you, or or Sigurd. Like, they're cool characters. I'm glad they're there. Like that, they're like cool things, but they feel like what they are. They feel like power-ups with souls. Like that, when that's what they are. But what's cooler to me are the other characters, and seeing some of your actual characters fuse with the emblem rings and seeing how they develop a little bit. I kind of care more about the present day characters than I do the emblems themselves. Like, they're cool. I'm glad they're there, but I don't think that it's all about, hey, this is just yes, the emblems are fan service, like, they are inherently, but I don't think that they don't take the main. They're not like the characters that are talking the most. It's the characters that are from that time that are taking up a bulk of the dialogue. Now I'm only 5 chapters in, right? Maybe Marth takes up more of an actor role later. He is an important character, but he's not like someone that's talking all the time. Because Marth comes out to talk to Alear, the main character of the game, but usually like in private or in confidence. Most of the time, Alear isn't by her or himself, depending which form you take. She's surrounded by a whole bunch of other people.
Gotcha.
And it's not that Marth can come out and talk to other people. It's happened, but it's not, if there's other people, he usually will let them kind of talk, and you'll just kind of stay in the background.
Okay,
and
so the
listen.
characters that are, new characters in this, they hold up on their own.
Yeah, I think so. From what I've gotten so far, that's how I feel. Like I enjoy the characters. Now, let me make something clear though. I do not think that the story is like this deep story. I don't think this is a deep story. I think it's a simple story. But simple to me isn't necessarily bad. I do think it is a device to carry the campaign, if you want to say that. But it doesn't mean I'm not enjoying the world and the characters I am. For me, it's like, okay, cool. We're on an adventure in a fantasy medieval world to save it. And I'm building up friends as we make this war campaign across to collect the rings to fight the army of the evil Fellow Dragon. Like, that's what it is. It's nothing groundbreaking. But it doesn't have to be, in my opinion. So I'm okay with that. When I wanted to play Fire Emblem, I wanted to play it for the gameplay, for the fights, for that. And the characters are kind of secondary for me. And so I'm fine with it so far. It's a fun adventure, and I am getting into it. And I do want to know what happens next. It's not like it's like terrible. Like but it's just an adventure, right? Like, I don't know.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not anything that's super
Would you say it's
deep.
more focused on like the characters rather than the overarching plot? Or do they not get deep enough with the characters, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think they really... I don't think I've had enough time to, like, explore the depths of each character, like, in their backgrounds. But I don't know if they'll even present that to me. But it's still... I'm still pretty early on to the game. So, like, some of those things will be built upon as I progress. Because as you build your bonds with your characters, you unlock more bond conversations and you learn a little bit more about them and stuff. So that may build up. But okay. I haven't gotten anything. I haven't gotten any like crazy backstories for any characters. If that's what you're asking me. So there's that to consider. There's not too much of that. I will say that for Alfred, there was some details mentioned about his past, and the current arc of the story is kind of about their family a little bit. And there's little details, but nothing like.
What do you say? Like
insane.
When I think of a story that's a bit more focused on characters, the first one, or the most recent one that comes to mind, is like Xenoblade 3. There are definitely like twists and turns and things you learn through the story, but I feel like most of the story content is actually learning about just more about the characters and learning how they fit in the world and like just how the world works and is unique rather than like the plot itself.
Say this. Xenoblade 3 blatantly is trying to go for a deeper story than Engage. Like, so,
right.
Like, with Xenoblade, each of the main characters, it's always about like these bigger themes and existentialism and life and the whole xenomorph thing. Like, it's questioning humanity and all of that. Like, and you kind of get a perspective of each person and where they came from, what their perspective is, and how it's evolving. So that's like, that's all super in-depth stuff. That's not in Fire Emblem Engage. It is simple. I'm not trying to argue otherwise. The stories and characters are simple. I'm simply saying it's still a fun world.
Okay. Gotcha. I think I'm getting a picture here. I guess the next thing I wanted to ask you about was, we know that like after battles you can usually like explore the areas where you battled in.
Yeah.
Is that actually like a big part of the game, or is it just something you can do just because? Like, how in-depth are those areas? What's the point of going there?
They're not super in-depth. I'm glad they're there. Like, I enjoy them. 'Cause you can explore the entire battle map. So, the entire battle map is rendered in full 3D, and when you're playing the game, you can angle the camera a little bit so you can see somewhat of it, but for the most part, it looks like almost like a 2D map, right? Just because of the top-down perspective, so you can
Right.
strategize. And when you pick a battle, it zooms into a 3D environment pretty much seamlessly. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, you're allowed to explore that map. And what's cool is that they'll try and earlier on, some of the earlier ones, there's not too many other characters, so you don't really see that much. But there are some parts where it's like you're in a town or you're in like a castle, so you'll get to interact with some of the castle knights or some of the townsfolk after the fact, after the battle, and you can read some blurbs from them. But it's not mandatory at all. You can skip all of it, but there are some advantages to exploring towns afterwards. So you can actually adopt animals, and every time you adopt an animal, you take it back with you to the Somniel in the farm, and there are certain advantages to that. So there are pets and things. You can get cats and dogs and chickens and goats and stuff, and you'll find them in some of the battle
farm
maps. Yeah, you can build that up, but some of that is also related to how much money you've donated to particular countries, because they can open up more things you can adopt and things like that.
Okay.
And I don't understand the full advantages of it yet, but there's an advantage there. Basically, I like doing it because I like to see the map. It's cool to see the map that you were actually, because you when you do a battle map, right, you see it from the top down perspective, and you get windows into how it looks in 3D during the battles, and it looks good. But once the battle ends, you actually get to literally walk around pretty much that entire environment, and it's great. Now, I'll say it's not like incredible though, because it's not like the map is actually that large to begin with, right? Like the maps may seem sizable when you're constricted to the grid like square by square movement process that is Fire Emblem. But when you're allowed to run and dash around and move your camera like in a full 3D like third-person action adventure style kind of game, you'll realize that the maps are fairly constricted, because like there's an invisible barrier. It's almost like a mirror. Like it's a neat little effect, but it's very clearly showing you can't go any further. And if you go there, and ask you if you want to leave, and you can do that or just go to the portal in the middle. But basically, all the characters you brought into battle, you can talk to and get some sort of dialogue in relation to the fight or what have you, where they're at as a character after the battles. And I haven't got anything that's like super in depth, but I still care to like check it out. So it's cool. I'm glad it's there. Nice. I'm glad it exists.
Nice character building.
And you can collect some items and adopt pets. And there's some level of character building. And it's fun. It's fun to see it all rendered in 3D and explore it. And I do spend a few minutes per area. Like, I don't just skip it. I never feel like skipping it. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I get to see it. So I'm glad it's there. But I can see how some people might just be like, okay, neat, move on. Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll spend the time exploring every single one if I get the game, but
they're not that big though, so you can see everything. You can pull up a map to see everything really quickly, so they're not that big, so it's not really like overwhelming or anything like that.
Okay. Trying to figure out what else I want to ask. How many hours do you have in the game at the moment?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. 10 hours.
I'm trying to figure out how long the game is. 10 hours?
Yeah.
You think it's what, about a 30-hour game then?
I think it's probably like a 30-ish hour game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
I'm guessing. I really don't know.
How is the gameplay?
My sense is that Fire Emblem Engage is a lot quicker to finish because you don't have to deal with all the monastery stuff. But it's more replayable, which is what a lot of people prefer in Fire Emblem.
How does the gameplay hold up to Three Houses? Do you think it's better or worse or just different?
I think it's better. I think the gameplay flow is a lot smoother, and I'm getting from fights quicker. I'm still getting the story. I can still explore. I've already talked to you about how the Somniel is better. Like, it's just easier to explore. There's actually fun mini games, and every time you go back, there's something else new to find, and you're not forced to do it. Like, you don't have to do any of it, but if you explore, you're rewarded for your exploration, and that's cool. But then the actual main gameplay, I mean, it's still Fire Emblem. Like, it was Fire Emblem in Three Houses, and it's Fire Emblem Engage. except now I think it just looks and runs a lot better. So it's a lot cleaner looking, it's a lot sharper, it's more vibrant. So that adds to it. I would say visually, the actual attacks look really cool. I would say it looks better. It looks a lot better than Engage. So when you actually go into the battle, it's really cool. And I understand some people are like, oh, it's the graphics, but the thing is, like, when you're doing the battles and you make your decisions, to then see that represented visually, it's really nice and satisfying. So I would say the graphics in Engage are more complementary to the game.
Feel good is like animations and sound effects and things.
And I would say that that's definitely a significant step up over Three Houses, and that I think it actually improves the overall gameplay experience, if that makes sense. And,
yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think the combat was bad in Three Houses at all. So
no,
it's one of those things where I can't really say it's bad. There are things that mix up the gameplay a little bit. So like in Three Houses, you have the gambits where you could like kind of have an army come with you. In Three Houses, they brought back the triangle system. So let's see, sword is red, right? So you want to think of like Pokemon like a triangle. So sword beats axe, which is green, like grass, and then axe beats a lance, which is blue for like water, and then the lance beats the sword, right? So water beats fire, kind of like that. So red, green, blue, that triangle. And then there's also like I think hand-to-hand combat beats like bows and mages and stuff like that. But there's other things like mages can crush like knights, and then archers crush flying units. Like there's other little
archers
things.
Will wreck you if you're flying.
And a lot of that stuff existed in Three Houses already. So but yeah, they brought back the triangle part though that was not in Three Houses, but then they built upon it with the break mechanic. So if you use the winning side of a triangle, you can knock the weapon off of an opponent for that turn, so they can't counterattack and hurt you. On the flip side, it can go both ways though. But also there are the emblems, and I only have 3 emblems so far. I'm about to get the 4th one, and you can attach. It's not like you only get 1 emblem per game. You get an emblem every time you get an emblem ring. That's another one you can put on one of your characters. So I'm assuming by the end of it, you could have 12 emblem rings, each one on a character, and that adds. Every time you do that, it adds certain stats and abilities, and that can change around the battle a lot, right? Like one of them is with Celine. When you engage, I forget the name of the hero, but when you engage, one ability you get is Warp Ragnarok. So you can actually teleport like way off into the map, to a totally different part of the map, and then just have like a ranged, powerful magic blast. Like she's literally just transporting there and doing her same attack elsewhere. And it's pretty awesome. Now, the challenge of that is that if you put yourself elsewhere, you leave yourself open to getting attacked too. But it's cool. And then once you do it, though, you don't get it again until you recharge your emblem. Like your emblem, when you're engaged, so your emblem stays with you. Like they're part of your moveset. But when you engage, when you're like an extra powered up state with more special abilities, you have access to those for 3 turns, but you have certain specials you can only do once during those 3 turns, and after those 3 turns, when you recharge it again, you get it again. Like the Warp Ragnarok I told you about, right? Like, so you can only use the warp attack once every time you engage, but you can engage more than once in a battle. But you have to power it back up either by battling for a few turns or fighting special like spots that to recharge your engage power. Yeah, so I would say, the game feels a little faster. The attacks are more satisfying. I like the variety that the Engage rings offer, alongside bringing back the triangle mechanic with the breaking. And so it's pretty much as good old Fire Emblem, just with a few extra little bells and whistles. But something that I think should be said is the UI is significantly improved. It's a lot easier to understand. All the information is right there in front of you, and you can literally, there's a button where I think you press info, I think you press X if I remember correctly, and it then opens up like a little rectangle that highlights different parts of the UI, and you can just literally go to each piece and see what it is, because there's lots of numbers and stuff on screen, but you can literally check what each one is by pressing info, and it can hover over each thing and it tells you what that is, so you understand what you're looking at.
That's actually super nice.
Yeah. And another neat little thing is that like in previous games, like you'll see like a 2D flat image when you're about to fight another enemy comparing each other.
Right.
It's a fully 3D model that's there that's representing it, so it looks a lot nicer.
You got the animations going on.
Yeah,
and
everything
such.
is just a lot more intuitive, I would say, and it's a lot more
It's a
streamlined
lot polished.
and polished. Yeah, so it's good old Fire Emblem, but it's just kind of like pushing it to its most polished limit.
Nice. Well, I think you might have sold me. I did just get, I think I said it in the podcast that Kirby's on the way. So, I gotta beat Kirby first, but that's not a long game. So, maybe sometime early next month, I'll cop me a copy of Fire Emblem Engage. Check it out.
And if for whatever reason you skip it, maybe you'll play it during that year-long drought we're getting after Tears of the Kingdom, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. Twitter.
I
My
don't believe
backlog will finally be
drought-
finished, apparently.
I don't believe that drought. Also, Tears of the Kingdom's gonna last us a long time. So there's
Oh,
that. Yeah. But we've reached the end of tonight's discussion. Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. If you could leave a like, that'd be super appreciated. If you haven't subscribed before, please do so as well. But we'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Cool.